Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and we'll call this meeting to order of the LAFCO Commission. It is, what day is it? Gosh, yes, Wednesday, September 13th, 2023, and it is promptly 4 p.m. So we'll call the meeting to order, and I'd ask you all to stand, and we will salute our flag. Join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, one organizational item I mentioned, we've set up another room. We can have another 30 individuals watching this meeting in another room. We have somebody in the hallway, and so that will accommodate at least another 30 folks if we have more that attend. And then we can call them in to speak when we get to those times. So thank you very much for your patience. Great turnout and welcome. Thank you for being here on these important issues today. With that, Amy, I'll ask you to call the roll.
Commissioner Alpine?
Here.
Commissioner Burris? Commissioner Landon? Here. Commissioner Mendonça?
Here.
Commissioner Rohan?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Holmes?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Carl? Alternate Commissioner Nisley?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Spriggs?
Here.
And Chair Gustafson.
Here. Thank you. I assume we have a quorum. Okay, now is our time on our agenda where, I'm sorry, first we'll go to changes and approval of the agenda. Michelle, do you want to announce the changes that we're suggesting for today?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We do have a request to hear the business items first. But we do have a couple of speakers online and here in the audience. And then if we could combine 7A and 7B, since they are similar items. Otherwise, that's all the changes from staff.
Okay, so for the public, then what we're going to do is proceed to, after our consent calendar, we will go to items 7A, B combined, 7C, 7D. We anticipate those are pretty quick items, and we want to get those business items out of the way. I think most of you are here for items 6A and B. So we will proceed in that way and try to work as efficiently as we can. So with that, I would accept a motion to approve the changes of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda change.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So now's the time on our agenda for public comment. Now, these are items that are not on today's agenda. And so if any member of the public would like to address the commission on items not on today's agenda, please come up to the podium and we will take your public comments. We never have this many people for a meeting, so I think you're here for a business item, right? Great. Okay. And no one online? Okay, then we'll move to consent calendar. We have two items on our consent calendar, our minutes and our financial reports. Do I have any commissioners that have questions on those? Okay, any public comment on our consent calendar? Not seeing any, then I'd accept a motion.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioners Holmes and Rohan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then we'll move on to our business items, calling now to items 7A and B combined. Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. The items before you were adopted as part of the work plan. It was item 9 and item 17 of the adopted work plan for the fiscal year. So these two contracts would just authorize staff with legal counsel's approval of the contract. We need to make some modifications to our existing contract. They're a little bit out of date. But otherwise, first municipal service review and sphere of influence study is with the South Fork consulting team. And then the second contract is with AP Triton for the municipal service review and sphere of influence update for the city of Roseville. And staff is recommending approval.
Commissioners, any questions?
I have a
Yes.
question. I saw the proposal for Rocklin did not include a public meeting.
It did not. It did include extra hours for the consultant. I did offer that to the city of Rocklin, but they are short-staffed, and so we may use the hours for the consultant to do extra research or to do public engagement. If we need to do both, and if we can do both, as our policy is very much in favor of the public engagement, et cetera. We can come back with a contract amendment, but as I mentioned, staff did offer that to the city, but at this time.
I must have used the word incorrectly when I wrote my note, because it didn't say public meeting in my memory. I said public hearing, but you said public meeting. And are you referring to just a public meeting for engagement?
Yes, we will definitely have the public hearing for LAFCO that's legally mandated.
Right.
We'll have the draft and the final. What I thought you were talking about was the community meeting, through
Yes,
the
that
city.
is what I meant.
Okay, yes, and that is, recommended with our policy, but not required.
Okay, all right, thank you. No other questions?
Any other commissioners have questions on these two items combined? Okay, any members of the public here that would like to address items 7A or and B on our agenda? Not seeing any in the room. Are there any online? Okay, then I'd accept a motion to approve these items.
Move approval. Second.
Okay,
Rick.
I'll give it to Holmes and Stevens. How's that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. We'll move to item 7C on the agenda. This is the grand jury final report for South Placer Fire District fiscal challenges and station closures, and it's our draft LAFCO response.
Thank you, Chair. You do have a draft response in your packet, and staff is happy to make any amendments or edits as you feel necessary. Staff's recommendation is to respond that R4, recommendation R4, will not be implemented because it is not reasonable. There's just simply not enough time between now and December 31st. But as I noted there, we will continue with our ongoing fire study for emergency services, dispatch, et cetera. We do have an update from the consultant that they're about 26% done. So they are moving along. They are expecting that they will do on-site visits the end of October. That's for all of our dispatch agencies, all of our fire protection districts, fire departments, et cetera. They will be here for, I believe, 3 days making the rounds. So as I mentioned, if you have any changes for me, I'm happy to make them, and staff is recommending approval.
Commissioners, were there any suggested changes or edits to the response to the grand jury?
I have no, I just commented, I think this report is well-written, and it explains how the fire services districts work, and so I really appreciate the effort you put into for this letter. So with that, I'll move approval.
And I'll second.
Okay, I do need to ask for public comment first. Is there any member of the public who is here on item 7C? Not seeing any. Anybody online? No. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And now we'll move to item 7D. This is the LAFCO project number 2022-01, reorganization of the North Tahoe and Meeks Bay Fire Protection Districts. Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. I've been reporting the progress for the North Tahoe and Meeks Bay Fire Protection District. We are still where we were basically the end of last year. You do have the notes there from the El Dorado County as well as the North Tahoe Meeks Bay Fire Chief, who they are all requesting that we keep the item open or the project open. I believe Sue Heineke with El Dorado County is there, and I'll turn it over to her. But just before I do that, I wanted to show you again where we are at in the process and where we have been, which is the Rev and Tax Code 99 tax negotiations that must occur between the two counties. That's the red arrow where we're at, and then so there's quite a bit more of the process. It still has to go to your board for your consideration, and then finally it has to go back to the voters. We are about 2 years into this project, and there's not a lot of movement, which is why staff had recommended closing the application.
Thank you, Michelle. Board members, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I've been watching this because I'm in the.
Rick, do you mind turning on your mic? The button is
Button's on this side.
on the
On
side.
the side.
Yes.
Right.
There you
go,
go.
Rick.
I've been watching this because I'm involved in that area of the county, and I know North Tahoe Fire reasonably well, and essentially nothing's happened this year. There's a $2.5 million unfunded pension liability, and nobody wants to take it. And so we've waited, and nothing's happened. I'd be willing to extend this for a very limited period of time, and these people need to make some action because nothing good will happen for the people of Meeks Bay Fire if North Tahoe Fire terminates their agreement to serve the area, which they've been doing since 2014.
Yes.
So I don't know what's reasonable. I'd be willing to keep it open, I don't know, 2 months, 3 months? This has got to be done this year. So I'd be willing to extend it, but I'm telling El Dorado County, Meeks Bay Fire, and North Tahoe Fire, get moving.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevens, are there any other comments from the commissioners?
I will reserve my comments till we hear public comment.
Okay. Then first we'll go to the affected agencies and see, I believe that Sue's online and wanted to speak for El Dorado County. And then if the chief is in the back, if he wants to say anything.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. Sue Henneke, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. I do recognize that the districts have been talking about this for quite some time. I think Ms. McIntyre stated that they've been working on this for 2 years, but I would say in earnest, the county was pulled in last fall. And we did submit a proposed resolution for the increment. We have submitted a revised resolution because we understand that the underlying ad valorem, the base tax, needed to be addressed specifically in that resolution. That was our intent all along, that the base and the increment would go. So we have submitted that per our Rev and Tax Code obligations. The process has been a little different than what we have been accustomed to. It was our understanding we would have the tax increment negotiations, which we submitted our proposal, and then LAFCO would consider this and all the relevant studies and then potentially make conditions. But instead, what we've been asked through informal channels is to pay off the UAL for Meeks Bay. And those requests began in about December. And so I'm sure the commissioners and the agencies they represent can understand the challenges with being asked for such a large sum of money to be given to an outside agency without fully vetting all of that. What options, how did we get here? What options were explored for paying off this UAL? And, honestly challenging the underlying assumption that paying off the UAL should be a condition of this reorganization. So those are the tough discussions we've been having. We have been having discussions. We did have a good meeting with North Tahoe and Meeks Bay 2 weeks ago, and we feel like we can continue those discussions. I can't make any promises about how quickly we could come to a conclusion because, frankly, if LAFCO is going to refuse to approve it unless El Dorado County pays off Meeks Bay's UAL, that's going to be a challenge. So I think what we would like to see is where we get to a point where we truly are negotiating, where there is a give and take rather than us just being told we have to accept that this is what we need to do. I will say it's not been made clear to me why it is okay and it's acceptable for the residents of Meeks Bay to now come into a district that would have a 19 or 20 plus million UAL that North Tahoe has, but it's not okay to have the reverse happen. So those are the discussions we've just started to have because we are getting together with the fire districts. But our hope and our understanding of the process was that we do the rev and tax code increment negotiations, and then it goes to LAFCO to condition the project if necessary, and then we would discuss those conditions. So we're a little bit thrown off by the process, to be honest, and we're not trying to be an obstacle. We do see the benefit to the residents of Meeks Bay. So I think at this point, if we could just get the whole process back on track, we would be committed to moving forward and trying to find some solutions.
Thank you, Sue. Chief, did you want to make any comments? You don't have to speak, but if you you drove all the way here.
Good evening. Steve Layton, Fire Chief, North Tahoe Fire Protection District. I'm also the contract fire chief for Meeks Bay, but I'm a North Tahoe fire employee, not a Meeks Bay fire employee. But I'll tell you, I've been doing this for 33 years. Been in the fire service, firefighter for 33 years. This is the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in my career. Had to deal with politically. It's just a huge can of worms. But I will tell you, we have been making progress. We started this thing December 7th and 8th of 2021 when we got the boards together, both North Tahoe Board and Meeks Bay Board, to finally agree to do this. Now in 2014, Meeks Bay went into contract with North Tahoe Fire for fire services, to contract fire services. In 2016, all of Meeks Bay employees became North Tahoe employees. So since 2016, operationally, we've been operating as one, and when someone calls 911, they get North Tahoe firefighters, and they wouldn't know the difference whether you're in Meeks Bay or North Tahoe Fire District. But as far as not operationally is fine, but we're being bogged down in 2 budgets and 2 audits and 2 this and 2 that. It's not efficient. We're not operating as efficient as we should be. So I agree with you, Commissioner Stevens. We need to get this going. We got support letters in December 20th of 2021, CEQA document 1229 of 21, El Dorado MSR 823 of 22, fiscal impact analysis number 1, 823 of 22, fiscal impact analysis number 2, 729 of 22, application for LAFCO 831 of 22, 36 items that we've taken care of North Tahoe Fire in the last 2 years. So we're at the point where we got to get this going. So I would support an extension, but not this open-ended extension thing. We got to get this thing going. So.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Okay, I'll look. Are there any public members here to speak on this item? I'm not seeing any in the room. Anybody online? Okay. Michelle, did you want to address any of those issues? Otherwise, I'll go to commissioners.
For the extension, it would be better to do 6 months just because we have the holidays coming up, and that will still give the North Tahoe Meeks Bay a chance to renegotiate their contract, their existing contract, if they so choose, ahead of the fiscal year end. I think their contracts are due in May? June 30th. So I think a 6-month extension would allow for that, but the end of the fiscal year, I believe, will be difficult. Or, the calendar year. And then the end of the calendar year would be difficult, and then the end of the fiscal year would be difficult, so somewhere in between.
Okay.
So,
Commissioners?
somewhere between the end of the calendar year and the end of June of next year?
Yes, because then that will allow the two districts to extend the contract.
But isn't the big issue is the pension obligation that it needs to be paid? Or someone has to figure out how that's going to be funded
Yes,
to make this thing work?
yes.
That's a pretty big lift. I don't know how that's going to work.
We can come back to your body and ask for an additional extension, come back maybe in April, and we can, that still gives the districts time for a April, May, June meeting ahead of the close of the fiscal year.
Chief, would 6 months work for you, do you think? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, you're putting a thumbs up.
No more than 6 months.
Okay. Would that be okay with you?
If that's the the will of the board, yeah, I'm okay with it, but
Okay. Well, I'd entertain a motion to extend this 6
I
months.
move that we extend this process for 6 months.
Second.
Okay, we have
is
a,
there a date certain to?
April
Six-
1st.
April Fool's Day, huh?
I like it. It'll be ready for an April meeting. Gives 60 days.
Let's do middle of April because our meeting is the second Wednesday of the month.
Okay, you want to, let's do tax day, huh?
Oh, okay.
I'd say the 1st, so then it could be agendized for our April meeting.
Okay,
So we could look at it for the April meeting.
I accept your amendment, sir.
Thank you.
okay, so we have a motion to extend this till April 1st. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Hopefully, we'll see a resolution, and thanks for all the hard work on this, Chief. Okay, we'll move now back to, I think, our main items on the agenda that you're all here for. Sorry to have taken a bit of your time on these other items, but we have finished our business items. We'll move to item 6A, LAFCO Project 2023-01, Sphere of Influence Update, City of Lincoln.
thank you, Chair. So the last sphere of influence update for the city of Lincoln was in October. It was approved by LAFCO on October 13, 2010. And the sphere at that time is the existing sphere, and what is being proposed today and what staff's recommendation, which is just to affirm what's existing. What's different about the resolution to affirm the sphere that is different from the resolution to update the sphere was we wanted to specifically call out that the commission has approval from the landowners for the farmland security zone parcel that is within Lincoln's sphere of influence, and then also there were a number of Williamson Act active contracts that were left out of the 2010 resolution. Otherwise, it is the same, and the information that we used for the sphere of update, even though it's just affirming, was the Municipal Service review that your commission adopted on March 8th, 2023. So with that, staff's recommendation is to approve Resolution 23-06 with the determinations and the map exhibit, the sphere exhibit, which is on the screen.
Thank you, Michelle. Commissioners, are there questions?
No question.
Not seeing any commissioner questions. Look to the public. Are there any members of the public who have a comment on item 6A? Mr. Garabedian.
Good afternoon, Mike Garabedian, or Placer County tomorrow. Thank you for this opportunity to address this issue. I oppose maintaining the current situation because I think it's time to reconsider that and start anew with this proposal. and what it should be. I mean, the city is already about 23 square miles, and the annexation today is about 7 square miles. And it's time for the city, and I mean, what San Francisco's, 50 square miles? Are we trying to be a San Francisco in size? It's time for the people to decide what they'd like to do, not just the people outside in the sphere of influence, but the people inside to be meaningfully involved in that. The least the paper could do is have some kind of insert explaining the situation, looking at the alternatives, so that the residents can decide and not leave it up to the developers to sort of fill in like the next proposal on the agenda is, depending on what they want to do. So, yeah, I would hope you would just postpone this and take it off the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. Are there any other members of the public? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Wechter, and I reside in the sphere of influence, currently Placer County. I actually have a similar opinion, and that is that at the time that this particular sphere was originally developed, we had a different economic state. There was a different trajectory for the growth. Our data hasn't really shown what was anticipated isn't matching the current existing numbers. And I think having a refreshed opinion of the current public situation, the public ideals about what is needed in order to preserve the idea of continually keeping open spaces and agriculture land use available and disallowing urban sprawl and looking at density issues and infill prior to urban sprawl is a good idea. So I would actually agree that postponing it and having an open discussion is more warranted. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commenters on this item? Anybody online? We have quite a few people online. She has to look through the list. Okay, not hearing others, then I come back to the commission. Are there any comments or questions from commissioners on this item?
I don't have any questions. I follow the track of the staff recommendation and am prepared to make that motion unless there's discussion.
Any other commenters? Okay, then I'd entertain that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion Rohan and second Alpine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Not seeing any, so that motion passes. Okay, so we're now on to item 6B. And I want to, for the public, thank you for being here. This is an important issue to all of you, and we really appreciate you being here. And I kind of want to go through how we're going to run this portion of the meeting. So first, staff will provide a presentation. We will then hear from the applicant and developer in that order. Then we'll go to our affected public agencies for any comments they have, and then to the public for your comments. The commission right now anticipated this may go a while because there's quite a few who want to speak today. If you don't mind filling out cards, that helps us judge how many speakers we are going to have. And you can turn those in at any point to Amy here. And then we will take a break at some point during this meeting, hopefully not more than 30 minutes. Right now we said about 6:30, given the times. So just please anticipate all of that. Okay, so we'll start on item 6B. This is LAFCO project number 2022-02, Village 5, Village 7B, annexation to the City of Lincoln. Michelle, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm going to keep my presentation brief, and it's just really the highlights of the staff report. But if you have any questions or want to stop me during my presentation, that will work. So the proposal in front of the commission is to consider a change of organization, which is an annexation to the City of Lincoln to annex approximately 4,545 acres of unincorporated territory. Now, all of these areas are within the sphere of influence, which was just adopted by your commission, but the purpose is to extend municipal services to facilitate residential, commercial development, parks, and open space. And let me just show you. This is a vicinity map. There is an official map and geographic description that is stamped technically correct, or stamped and also signed technically correct by the county surveyor, that is provided in your packet. But this is a little bit easier to see the location. So the area is located south of Nicholas Road, and as I mentioned, it's west of the existing city limits in the sphere. I want to bring up this map that you saw from the SUD B NAQ annexation from about 6 months ago, which the commission approved. And the reason why I'm bringing it up now is because there's other information that's included in this map that gives the commission as well as the public some context. So just to start with the north part, which was Nicholas Road, you'll notice that the Rockwell Lane community, which was included in the Village 5 specific plan, is excluded from the proposal. And then as you go down past the SUD B NAQ, or SUD D NAQ, which is the red area, there's a darker green, 2 areas that are dark green, and that's Village 7. That was in the Village 7 specific plan, which is why you have 2 CEQA documents and 2 specific plans before you. And then as you continue along that boundary, there's an area that was included in the specific plan but excluded within the proposal area. And the reason being was that the parcel was approximately 310 acres, but only about 150 acres was included in the specific plan. And so that requires a lot line adjustment or a lot line adjustment, parcel split, et cetera, that is under the authority of the county as the agency with the land use jurisdiction. But that process would have to go first before LAFCO could take action. So that's why it was excluded. But I wanted to show you this map, as I said, even though it's a little bit outdated with the SUD B NAQ, to give you context. Okay, so the affected agency from this proposal is Placer County Water Agency, the Cemetery District, the Resource Conservation District, and County Service Area 28. So this is a dependent district that was, and it covers all of unincorporated Placer County. So the CSA cannot exist in incorporated parts of the county unless the city council agrees to it. So without that agreement, your commission is required to detach the CSA, which is why there's a condition of approval. I do understand that there's a couple affected agencies that are here today that will want to speak. So just very quickly, the factors, there are 17 factors which are included in your packet. I'm just going to touch on a few. I'm happy to go over any of the factors. But the first one is under 56668E, which is the effect of the proposal on maintaining the physical and economic integrity of agricultural lands. So based on substantial evidence in the record, this is the staff recommended determination. Based on the substantial evidence in the record, the commission determines that the city of Lincoln will succeed to the Placer County's rights, duties, and powers pursuant to Government Code Section 51243 for lands under Williamson Act contracts within the proposal area. So the city has adopted rules and procedures in place for lands under Williamson Act, which is how the commission is able to determine that they can annex those lands that are under Williamson Act to the city of Lincoln. So they did do this approximately 6 months ago in a notice public hearing. So just a visual of what all of the Williamson Act lands look like. The dark green are those that are in active Williamson Act contract. The light green is in non-renewal. And you may recall from our discussions during the MSR that once the property owner decides to go into the non-renewal, there is a 10-year waiting period. And in that 10 years, sorry, need water. And during that 10 years, the assessment value goes up. So, but that is the areas, as I mentioned, light green, non-renewal, dark green, active. So other factors that I wanted to highlight, the need for organized community services, the present costs and adequacy of governmental services and controls in the area, probable future needs for those services and controls, and probable effect of the proposed incorporation, formation, annexation, or exclusion, and alternate courses of action, and the costs and adequacy services and controls in the area and adjacent areas. The recommended condition of approval that is in the packet required that the city of Lincoln provide fire protection and law enforcement services to the proposal area. The county did express some concerns regarding whether or not the law enforcement could be conditioned, or law enforcement services could be conditioned. So staff's recommendation is to remove just that portion of the condition.
If I can elaborate on that, the reason for this suggested edit is because of the question of whether including the Rockwell Lane community means a proposal area or means an island. So to the extent the commission were to eliminate the island and bring that into the proposal area, then the city would be able to provide law enforcement services because that community would be within the city. However, if your commission were to approve the proposal area as proposed, thereby creating an island, the county sheriff constitutionally must provide law enforcement services in unincorporated areas of the county and cannot contract that away. So if the Rockwell Lane community remains an island, the county sheriff will still have to have responsibility for law enforcement within that island as a matter of constitutional law.
But I do want to show you the map that includes the proposal area and the surrounding areas. Again, yes, it is an old map that you've seen before. But what's important about this map is that you'll notice that the county's fire station that is located closest to the proposal area is volunteer. It's not staffed. So the closest resource is the city of Lincoln, and also because we do have our dispatch. We operate under mutual aid and not auto aid, and so for the purpose of getting resources quicker to the proposal area, it would be beneficial to include that condition where the city provides services to Rockwell should the commission determine that it will create an island. So moving on to the factors, the definiteness and certainty of the boundaries. So as I mentioned, there is the proposal does request for, or the applicant has requested that the commission create the unincorporated island, which is the Rockwell Lane community. So there are two conditions before you, or two proposed conditions. The first one, option one, which is staff's recommendation, is to amend the boundary and include the Rockwell Lane community within the proposal area. The second option is to provide services to the proposal area, for the city to provide services to the proposal area, but it will not change the jurisdictional boundary in that city. So why is that not staff's recommendation? Because there are disadvantages to option two. The first is that Placer County will retain land use authority. The second is that the city of Lincoln will not be able to collect their share of the 1% ad valorem. They cannot have CFDs because they don't have land use authority. And then the residents in the Rockwell Lane cannot participate in city elections, and they cannot run for office in the city. And why I pointed that out, because we do have areas in Placer County, existing islands, where Amy and I receive a lot of calls during the election because they cannot run for these offices, but they have an Auburn address, but they're not in the city of Auburn, and other locations, right? And it's not just the cities, it's also our special districts. So because we do receive a number of calls during the election season, that's why it's prominently displayed there. And then, of course, if the sheriff has to provide services to an unincorporated area that's not contiguous to their existing, there could be longer response times than what the city could provide, because the city is encapsulates that island. So there's a possible, we did receive a request from a landowner and that did not make it in the staff report. So I wanted to point out that the small parcel, which is a 9.8 acre parcel, is excluded. So that's the small one, the area that's outlined in blue. And then the larger parcel, which is about 71 acres, is included in the proposal area. So the request is for the commission to either exclude them both or to annex them both, but their preference, I believe, is to be excluded. So there's a condition of approval there for those APNs. So if the commission approves the proposal, whether or not you include the Rockwell Lane community or you exclude the Rockwell Lane community, it is an inhabited area, which means there's 12 or more registered voters. So if the commission were to include the Rockwell Lane community, there are 178 registered voters. So if during the protest proceedings, which will be approximately November 1st of this year. It has to occur at least 35 days after today. If we receive less than 40 or 44 and fewer ballots, which are protest, then the commission or this project is approved. The executive officer signs the certificate of completion, we record, the annexation goes through. If we receive between 45 and 88 ballots, then it goes to a special election, and we turn that over to the elections department. And then if we receive 89 or more ballots by November 1st, and again, we will send out a notice and we will give everyone the exact time, location, et cetera, and all of the information. But if we receive 89 or more, then the proposal is terminated. And there's no further action. So if the commission were to create an island, the number of registered voters is down to 106. And in that scenario, we would need 26 or fewer to sign the certificate of completion, record, and the annexation is final. And then 27 to 52 for an election, and then 53 or more will terminate the proposal. So I wanted to, what happens if the proposal is terminated either at the protest, during the protest provision, or during the election? What that means is the city cannot reapply to LAFCO within 1 year for the proposal unless there's a substantial change, and your commission will have to make that determination to waive those requirements. So the staff recommendation is, as I mentioned, there are two options with the first condition of approval, but the staff recommendation is option 1, which is to amend the boundary to include the Rockwell Lane community. And the other actions there is to detach, as I mentioned, CSA 28. Did you have another condition? Okay.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you.
Michelle. The way the screen went blank, I wasn't sure. Commissioners, are there any questions for Michelle or at this point in time?
Yes.
Yes.
Trying to find the right button.
Commissioner Rohan?
Is that it?
Yes.
Could you go back to this small piece of property that
there
was
you go.
deleted? Go back to where the property is outlined in blue.
Yes, I just don't want to go too fast
I don't want you to either.
because, no, I think it was the Sud B map.
If you can't get to the exhibit, can you go back through that section of it for me?
So here, I believe this shows the,
That's what the one I'm referring to.
oh, okay, which? Oh, I see, thank you. 1 second, sorry, I'm sorry, there.
There you go. Okay.
I did that, and I'm not an artist, I'm so sorry. I did that today. So yes, so the smaller parcel was excluded, but the larger parcel is included. And
Okay.
they are under the same ownership. The smaller parcel has a home with the address. I did verify with the county surveyor that they are separate legal parcels. And so yes, you can annex one and leave the other, but as I mentioned, the landowner did request that they be either excluded together or included together.
Okay, and thank you. And then the second thing I wanted to get clarified is that your recommendation is still calling for collapsing CSA 28.
Not collapsing, but detaching.
Detaching, okay. But Sheriff, if the island were to remain outside of the annexation, the Sheriff's Department would be covering that area.
Right, but that's, so the CSA 28 is a county service area, and it's just a
Just
dependent
fine.
district, and so we have to detach it.
All right.
It doesn't have anything to do with law enforcement. Those powers are not activated at this time, so, so not at this time.
Thank you. I needed that clarification.
Let me be clear then. If it remains an island, then that part is not detached.
Yes.
Only the part that's being annexed.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes,
Okay.
no, yeah, because then we would create an island in another district.
Yes, okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Regardless of whether all of it gets annexed or there's an island left, for the area that does get annexed, does that service immediately get transferred over to the city to provide fire service? I know the police service will stick with, actually, no, it would then go to the city, right? So they will immediately, upon the annexation, take over the service for that whole area.
Upon the recordation of the certificate of completion, unless the commission adopts some other date in the resolution, the effective date of the reorganization or change of organization, any proposal through LAFCO is the day the executive officer records the certificate of completion.
Okay.
On that day.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Comments or questions for Michelle? Okay, then we'll ask the applicant to make their presentation.
Amy, can you have Jeremy? Sean, just 1 second. We need to switch it over.
No problem.
Jeremy, can you show the slideshow from, I think I titled it Richland.
Yeah, we're on the wrong one. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and Vice Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sean Scully. I am the City Manager for the City of Lincoln, and as the City of Lincoln, as an organization, is the technical applicant, it falls to me to present the project. I'm going to, similar to Michelle, move through this fairly quickly, and as there's plenty of public comment that is important to hear this evening. So I think we're up. Okay, we are up. So an additional map, if you haven't seen enough tonight. This shows the proposal area as applied. So you see, it's not, the only difference that we would change in this map if we were to do it over is the little L-shaped property right in the center of the map is Sud B, and that is technically annexed into city limits at this time. So this is going to give you a little bit of a background as to the very lengthy process that has been Village 5 in a nutshell. You can go all the way back over 15 years ago to the approval of the 2050 general plan by the City Council, subsequent approval by LAFCO of our sphere of influence, City Council approval of the Village 5 specific plan and EIR in 2017. In 21, the Council approved the application that sits in front of you today. And earlier this year, we went through a fairly lengthy municipal services review with LAFCO and had that approved by your commission. And in April of this year, myself along with Placer County negotiated a tax sharing agreement for this area. Here is the land use plan. It's pretty small, but if you've looked at any of the materials that are in your packet, you can dive down. This just gives you an idea about the diversity and land uses that have been proposed. You have commercial, a variety of residential densities, open space, very large parklands, et cetera. This is a complex project. It's an ambitious project, and it's complex because of the parameters and constraints that surround it. Not all annexations have this many things to deal with, and it is one of the reasons it's taken over 15 years to get to this point is that there's a lot to navigate here. So Highway 65 hugs the west or eastern edge of this project, and it bisects a portion of it. There's an airport overflight zone, which I'll show you more detail in just a moment. 2 ravines run through the project area, and there's precious biological habitat and resources that had to be planned for and around. Here is the a map of the airport overflight zone. We thought this was important to share because it's a really important constraint to development on this side of Lincoln in general. That overflight zone is designed to make sure that there's certain land uses that are generally within some of those zones you see towards the top as you get closer to the airport, wherein it would be inappropriate to have high density type of uses or things where you have kind of communal assembly type uses, just given that we do have and run an operating airport right there and have for many years. So here's some details about Village 5. About 4,500 acres of that, a little over 2,700 acres of developable land. Lincoln has a 40% open space requirement that we are very proud of and require on any new projects coming into town. The estimate of residential units is approximately 8,900. There's roughly 4.3 million square feet of commercial. Generally, that is adjacent to Highway 65 and Nelson, and a future interchange that's planned at that location. Based on that estimate, we're able to extrapolate out generally what you can count on in terms of jobs based on square footage, and so our estimate is a little over 11,000 jobs. There's a very large 71-acre sports complex, 5 schools and 2 fire stations, and potentially even a police station in this area, depending on our future plans there. So this is a little bit more of a broad interpretation of our vision and long-term goals. So when the City Council established the general plan, it was really important that if they were going to lean into this village concept, that it be distinctive to each village, and that each village has a balance of uses that serve that area. We wanted to make sure as well that there are appropriate land use transitions between, for example, residential and residential and agriculture. Also, as you probably hear about all of the time, the state of California has continued to pelt cities and counties with housing requirements. And so as we develop Lincoln, we try to find ways to make it a diverse housing stock versus just one type of thing. And we're actually starting to see in the marketplace that there's more people interested in different types of housing projects versus just single-family home subdivisions. You see mixed uses adjacent to Highway 65. The intent there is to take advantage of that being adjacent to that roadway and hopefully pull in some people that might be interested in spending some dollars in the Lincoln area. And then, of course, we talked about compatibility with the Lincoln Regional Airport. This speaks a little to some of the outreach and stakeholder meetings. Obviously, this happened over a very long period of time, so this is just a small portion of the many, many hearings that have happened on Village 5 over the years. And one particular important one is the third bullet down, which is that it is before my time, but in 2018, a survey was conducted of the entirety of the annexation area, including Rockwell Lane. And while there was support and opposition in all areas, in particular in the Rockwell Lane, it was overwhelmingly opposed to annexation at that time, which informed the eventual application. So the question is, what are the benefits to the city of Lincoln? The general plan that the city of Lincoln has implemented over a number of villages now has generated some success for us in a variety of really nice projects and communities that people have chosen to move to. We like it because it is not a piecemeal project. It's a master plan community that attempts to think about it as a whole versus what's best for one person versus another. And significant trails, parks, and open space, that's sort of a Lincoln thing. It's very important to us. We are in significant need, if we're going to continue to grow, to really lean into parks and sports facilities. I probably hear about it just about every single day on my telephone in the office that we don't have enough baseball fields or soccer fields. And so this gives us an ability to address some of that. We talked about variety of housing types. The primary driver from a finance perspective, and that's sort of my expertise, is Lincoln is highly dependent on property tax, and I mean that in a negative way. The city and county survive on roughly 30 cents on the dollar for every dollar we all pay in property tax every year. And so when we sit down to try to negotiate how we're going to change jurisdictions, it's very complex because on the one hand, the county has responsibilities they still have to give after annexation. And on the other hand, I've got to figure out a way, along with the chief back there, on how we're going to staff our police and fire services. So while property tax is nice from a consistency standpoint because it's much less volatile, we are not diversified from a sales tax perspective. Our friends and peers to the south in Rocklin and Roseville have established themselves and for some time now as centers and benefit as a result of regional shopping in those areas. And Lincoln's position has been that we need to grow our sales tax base, not simply for the extra dollars for the general fund, but also to provide the opportunity for people to obtain necessary services and goods without having to drive outside of town. And ancillary to that is, we have become over a long period of time somewhat of a bedroom community. We have a lot of folks moving in from other areas. It's You know, we all know Placer County is a desirable place to live these days. And the consequence of that is that there's a slight disintegration in community as you grow. And part of that is that a lot of folks have to drive or commute somewhere very far for employment. And so part of economic development to us means providing opportunities for people to live and work in the community that they call home. And I kind of touched on it enables long-term economic sustainability and growth. So the commercial component of this project includes retail, but it also includes office, so it gives us some ability, which we have limited now, to attract businesses maybe that aren't even retail that would be interested in siting in Lincoln. Good access along Highway 65. We have very important to us to have a good job housing mix. We talked about that. I'm realizing now that I've already said all these things. Our model shows that the surplus is roughly $6 million annually to the general fund at build out. Now, you'll see here in just a slide, by build out, it'll be long after most of the people in this room are gone, except for I think I saw a little child back there who'll probably still be alive. The idea is that over a long period of time, it allows us to become more sustainable. One other little component, and I'm going to wrap up, is that we had a really creative idea that we worked on with the county when we established the tax sharing agreement for this area. The tax sharing agreement starts at a certain percentage split, and for every million square feet or 500,000 square feet of commercial that actually develops in the future, that split moves favorably in the city's way, to the point where we get roughly to 50-50 split at full commercial build out. So you might ask, well, why? Why does that make sense? The intent from the county, and frankly from the city as well, is that future councils, it's very common for a commercial landowner to say, I can't get a tenant in this location. I'd like to rezone it all to residential. That means more burden on the county services. It means more burden on the city services. So the tax sharing agreement sort of binds future councils, and it de-incentivizes them from zoning away the commercial uses. Here's the project timing. Just obviously, I think this probably is generous. There's today's action, whatever it may be. If approved, we go into backbone engineering plans for the first area. A lot of engineering work will occur over a multi-year period. If all of that goes really well, sometime in the 25 to 27 range, you'll start to see some infrastructure improvements, and I'll share some of those. Thereafter, you see probably over a 30-year period build out. So just real quickly, so you can understand the infrastructure components, you have a logical extension of existing infrastructure that we have stubbed to this area. We have major design improvements to a variety of roadways to accommodate future development, and then you have water, sewer, and water supply systems that have generally been planned. And in addition to stormwater to handle any kind of additional runoff. Finally, just to give you a sense of scale, and I think this number is probably low because by the time it's constructed, you could probably add about 20% to that. There's approximately a $100 million investment in phase one infrastructure costs to even begin serving the area. So to close here, our perspective is the annexation is logical, and it's related to the orderly growth. And what I want to mention to the board is, the commission, is that we view the concept of logic and orderly growth more than just Lincoln. And I think you'll hear from some other affected agencies today that many of the plans that have been developed over the many, many years here in Placer County, whether it be transportation or school facilities or any other kind of shared infrastructure that we all use, are built on the back of the assumption that someday, at least some of, Village 5 is going to build. And so it isn't simply logical from the city's perspective, it is also logical from all of these other agencies that provide services to our city and county residents. Michelle covered section 56668, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But I will close by just saying this, two things. One is we applied back in 2021 with the very specific intention to draw out Rockwell Lane, as it was made very clear that the residents at the time were not interested in being involved. And so our support is for option number 2 of the recommendation. And I'll leave you with this. I'm fully aware and appreciate that this is a controversial proposal and it's difficult for all types of parties. But I don't think that, I've heard a number of comments over my short tenure here about whether this is too large or too ambitious a project for Lincoln. And I think that if Lincoln isn't allowed to at least propose and explore ambition, then we are relegated to sending our residents down the road for their essential services and goods, and I just don't think that that's appropriate. So that's a little bit editorial, but I appreciate your time, and I'll be around if you have questions for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean. Commissioners, did you have any questions at this point for Sean? Okay. Following up on Sean's presentation, is there anyone involved with Village 5 development that is going to be speaking? With the applicant, okay. Okay, great. Okay. Sir, it's not time for public comment yet. Oh, yeah. Sir, can you wait till we go to public comment? Yes, it is. Yeah, can you wait just a minute? I have one more.
Okay.
Sir, can you wait just a moment?
Okay.
She's asked you to wait. Can you wait?
Sure.
Okay. I want to go to affected agencies next, and then we'll start the public comment period.
Okay, because like I said, it'll only take about a minute to show you about Village 5.
Okay. But sir, let us go to the affected agencies first, and then I'll call you first. Okay, sir? Thank you. Affected agencies. I see Placer County Water Agency here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the Commission. Thanks for having us today. So PCWA is an affected agency in 2 ways in this area. We currently serve agricultural water down the Auburn Ravine to folks that are in the agricultural business in this area. But perhaps more importantly for the future, we are a partner with the City of Lincoln in providing treated water service to the current residents of the city as their wholesaler, as well as to future residents of the City of Lincoln. So earlier this year, we provided comments on the MSR. We appreciate the staff's attention to those details of the comments, and we've recently, last week, reiterated our commitment to providing wholesale water service to the City of Lincoln so that they can serve that water to future residents of the city. I want to assure the Commission that we indeed have water for the expansion of the city. We work cooperatively with the city staff to plan their future build out. In fact, recently the city has invested in the future Ophir water treatment plant that we are going to begin construction of in the coming years to grow a growing residential base and industrial base in western Placer County. The water mix that's currently going to Lincoln and that will continue to go to Lincoln in the future is a combination of water purchased from the Nevada Irrigation District, water that PCWA purchases from Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and then mostly, especially for the area that you're looking at today, from the Middle Fork Project, which is a project that the citizens of Placer County voted to build in the early 1960s and that we completed in 1967, and has enough water for all of the build out of the municipalities in Placer County and the unincorporated areas of Placer County. So that's all I have for you today. I just wanted to reiterate the letter that we sent last week and appreciate the staff's work and cooperation with us on the MSR. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any questions for Mr. Fecka? Okay, thank you. Any other affected agencies here in the room? Representatives of affected agencies? I'm not seeing any online. Okay. So it is now time to start with our public comment. And I have some cards. You're not obligated to fill out a card, but I would like to get a raise of hands of those that may want to speak, so we have an order of magnitude, because we've had a couple requests. So, I'm sorry, how about lower your hands for a second? How many of you didn't fill out a card and want to speak? How's that? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And some of you might change your mind too. Okay, so that's 12, and then I have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And then in the other room, do we have individuals? Bridget, do you know if we have people in the other room? And see if any of them would like to speak. So commissioners, I mentioned to you that we did have a request for a 25, and I think we all received it, a 25-minute presentation. That would exceed what we've just heard from the applicant and the staff. So given the numbers that we have, no one in the other room? Okay. My suggestion would be to honor the presentation. I know we all received it. I'm happy to provide an extension of time, but a reasonable extension typically for the Board of Supervisors is a 10-minute extension. But I'm open to other suggestions.
I'm good with a 10-minute extension. I have read the PowerPoint.
Okay. I think we all have. Is there any other comments on that? Okay. So, Ms. Aaron, we will 10 minutes for your presentation when you're ready. Sir, I cut you off, and I know I said I would come back to you and you could come up first. So we will start the public comment. This, again, will be 3 minutes other than the request we had for, okay. And then I will call the rest of the names. I'll go to the cards first and then take the rest.
My name's Wally Larson. I live within Village 5. I'm going to ask everybody that lives within Village 5 to stand up. And then I'm going to ask everybody within Village 5 that will vote no on annexation, put their hand up. Is that a clue of how we do not want this? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you're right, you were less than a minute. I appreciate that. Okay. Sometimes government doesn't know that as well. Okay, so we'll start with the cards first. Cheryl, and I'm going to crunch your last name. Muzinich. Thank you.
Hi, I've been about a 33-year resident of Nelson. Well, now. I've been on Nelson Lane since 1990, actually longer than Mr. Scully's been alive, I think, and welcome him from Riverbank, I think, so he's fairly new here. Yeah, we knew about the 65 bypass and we knew about Village 5, but we certainly don't want to be annexed into the city. The city's already shown us, sorry Shanty, I know you're new too, to your position. You know, we've seen, Christine Mollenkoff and I have gone back and forth on some of the shortages in the budgets, and I don't know anything about government budgeting, but the streets the city has taken over from the county are in such bad repair. I have thousands of dollars. I drive a car that a lot of people think rich people drive. I drive a Tesla. I'm saving a bundle on gas, let me tell you. But I have very low profile tires, and that road keeps on tearing up my tires. And she asked me for essentially constructive notice. So how many of you would know about running over a pothole in advance? I mean, how can I give constructive notice about potholes that are this deep? So if the city's not taking care of the money in the budget that they have now, how are they going to take care of it in the future? Infrastructure, 65 has been backed up since it was put in. Where are we doing the infrastructure? Nelson Lane gets belly dumps and heavy equipment up and down it, over that little teeny bridge over Auburn Ravine, and I know you guys have seen it. It's so heavy, and that little thing's going to go down. That's a trout habitat, or pardon me, a salmon habitat. I mean, and nobody does anything about it. CHP is out there constantly handing out tickets because of the development that's going on, because the infrastructure is not in place. If we don't address the infrastructure first, we can't do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next,
Chair, just one quick comment. Jeremy, do you mind taking down the slides just to make sure? Thank you.
okay. Mr., let's see, Dean DeSantis? Did I get that close to right? Probably not. You knew who I was calling.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me today. And the property in this area, I live in this area. I live on Nicholas Road. And the lifestyle that I enjoy in unincorporated Placer County is one that I chose specifically for that type of lifestyle. I've lived in the city of Lincoln, and I moved recently, about 5 years ago, to Nicholas Road. And being a resident of the city of Lincoln and one that is a resident of Placer County, I see absolutely no benefit for the residents of the county to be incorporated into the city of Lincoln. I feel that I and my family are very well served by the Placer County Sheriff's Department and the Placer County Fire Department. I do not see or hear people in Lincoln talking about the exceptional response times of the fire department or Lincoln Police Department responding to their needs over and above what I am comfortable with the Sheriff's Department. I heard the city manager speak, and when I chose to live in Lincoln, I chose to live away from the hubs of employment. I chose to live away from the shopping mecca that we call the Galleria. I chose to live away from all of the traffic and the congestion around those things. I'm very comfortable with driving to Galleria if I want to shop, or driving to dining facilities outside the city of Lincoln if I choose. If people want to live near the hubs where they work, they will work and live in Sacramento County. They will live in areas where there is already establishment. If they want to work close to where they live, they will live in West Sacramento in the downtown area. That is not why people move to Placer County, is because they can live close to and be a part of their work area. The only people I see benefiting are the developers of the property and the people that are going to be benefiting from that growth. The growth of the city of Lincoln does not need to grow to 132,000 people by 2050. Does not need it. The land grab development system will, in my opinion, flood our roadways that are already packed, our schools that are already stretched to the limit, and our hospitals where you can hardly get into the emergency room on a Friday night. Lincoln cannot keep up with roadway management in their city. I think we've already heard that. Take a drive around East Avenue in Lincoln. That is a great example of the investment style that the city of Lincoln does in upkeep and the management of their finances. It's deplorable. If I wanted to live in the city of Lincoln, I would have moved there. Please do not approve the annexation.
Thank you. And as we go through the public comment, if you have direction on option 1 or 2, that is also helpful to the commission as you're addressing us, if you have a preference on those two. So I might just suggest that as well. Our next speaker is this Jose Luis Manzano Torres. I garbled that up so badly you don't even know. Okay. I'll take a second look, or I'll have my vice chair tell me how to say that name. Josie?
Torres?
Okay. We'll try again. Carla Manzano? Carla Manzano? No, Bridget said there was no one in the other room.
Maybe we try address, 805 Nelson?
Anybody from 805?
It's the same for those.
Okay, and this one as well, Paoca Patino Marquez? Okay. Well, that'll make it much shorter. Here we go. Michael Adele.
Good evening. My name is Michael Adele. I'm the Director of Facilities for the Western Placer Unified School District. So obviously, given this is one of the largest, or larger, villages going through, currently going through the process with the city, it also has one of the largest impacts to the district. So including the need for one new high school, one new middle school, 3 new elementary schools. And as far as the financial impact, that's to about the tune of about $550 million. So with that said, given the district's shortfall statutorily on how much we can charge developers to mitigate that impact, it really necessitates the need to negotiate increased fees through mitigation agreements, basically as a mutual benefit to both the developer and the district. Now that's not always easy. A lot of should I say, not so much enthusiasm from the developers to be charged more than legally we're allowed to charge. So essentially, that would be a voluntary mitigation agreement with the developers. Again, with that said, the current major developer in Village 5, Richland developers, right off the bat have been engaging. They've cooperated with the district, and really they actually engaged us on knowing that we were asking developers to enter into mitigation agreements, met with us, and it really, through continued good faith negotiations and discussions, we actually were able to negotiate a mitigation agreement with Richland Home. So again, that's not always the case. So they've been very supportive, very proactive. We meet with them consistently. So it really is, as far as other developments that's going on in the city, more of a true partnership. If the development happens, we feel that we've negotiated something to where we'll be able to collect the fees to build the elementary school. As I've said, they've been very supportive, including as construction costs have gone up, and we're not immune from that. Actually, I asked the question if they'd be willing to renegotiate those fees, and I didn't get a no. So in that regard, the district looks forward to continued discussions and negotiations with Richland and the other developers in the plan. So therefore, we don't necessarily oppose this annexation, and if it moves forward, we support it.
Great, thank you. Okay, next I have Gail Moore.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Gail Moore, and my family has 320 acres in the Village 5 plan and has owned it for over 120 years. We also have 320 acres just west of the plan. And my dad was Robert Moore, and he was on the Planning Commission for Placer County for 10 years, and so I followed the growth over the years. And I think Village 5 has a good plan for a good community, and I'm in favor of the project, and I'm here to ask your vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Madewell, is that right, or Maxwell? Madewell.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak concerning the proposed annexation of our neighborhood that, if passed, will greatly affect the lives of the current residents. My name is Michelle Madewell, and I live at 530 Nelson Lane with my mother and father, Ralph and Rita Howery. Up front, we are vehemently opposed to the forced annexation into the Lincoln city limits. Over 40 years ago, my mom and dad, who were both raised in rural areas, my dad in Gridley and my mom in Lincoln off of Nicholas Road, purchased an old barley field outside the city limits so that they could live without somebody constantly telling them what they could and couldn't do, like where they could park or where they could work on their cars, or how many animals or what kind of animals we can have. Our six-member family lived in two 20-foot trailers for months while my dad actually built our house while he worked at Formica at night. He, over the decades, trained trees to provide a complete shade canopy, but now he's almost 77 years old, and he can't build my mom another house, and he can't train any more trees. We cultivated the land, and we had festivities, going away parties, and weddings, graduation celebrations over actually more than over multiple generations. When you look at the map of the proposed Village 5 area, you see progress, you see growth, and you see money. The taxes that will be collected from the houses that will be built. When we look at the map, we see our homes, our past, our memories, and now our future is blurry. For you, this is just business, but for us, this is personal. Not only will this irreversible vote affect our way of life, but for some, it will affect their livelihood. Put yourself in our shoes. When someone is about to decide your future while disregarding your past and present, imagine in coming years that the county decides that where you or your parents or your loved ones have lived for decades, that they want to build condos and apartments, whether you like it or not. Would you just salute smartly and say yes ma'am or yes sir, or would you do anything that you could to preserve your past and protect your way of life, your livelihood, and your future? I left Lincoln for 18 and a half years serving in the United States Air Force and was fortunate enough to retire at a Beale. The base that I requested so that my girls and I could move home and we could move back to the country and the country living and not live so close to someone that I could hear my neighbors' conversations in their home from the comfort of mine. It feels like we are trying to swim upstream against raging rapids while screaming our hopes and our wishes and our concerns and our fears into deaf ears with a simple aye vote will change our way of life, potentially jeopardizing our lives and the lives of all the Lincoln residents and force our future into chaos of the unknown. Again, we vehemently oppose the forced annexation. We want to be left alone. I hope that you are listening and not just hearing the feelings, opinions, and the thoughts of the residents, the personal side that this vote would affect. Please don't just think of the future constituents of the supposed Village 5. Consider your current constituents, the current residents, our wishes, our wants, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to Becky Laspine. Laspine, is that right? Laspina. So sorry.
I'm Becky Laspina. My husband Michael and I live on Nelson Lane. First, I wish to thank Executive Director McIntyre. She works 7 days a week. She provided me with the commission's email addresses. And I want to thank Shanti Land. She was the only one who acknowledged receipt of my email. And Tracy Mendonca's came back as undeliverable, I'm sorry. But I suggested the members watch the City Council, City of Lincoln, August 8th council meeting, where the city residents were in uproar over the increase in their utility for water, garbage, and sewer rates. And the city manager explained that unless those rates went up, and they couldn't go up in slower rates because the utility would be bankrupt within 18 to 24 months. And then the subsequent City Council meeting on August 22nd, the proposal for those utility fees were voted to be raised. Water went up 84%, and sewer and garbage also went up. And at that same August 22nd meeting, the Public Works Director spoke about the city having 250 miles of pipeline, but only the funding to do a mile a year. So it would take 250 years to prepare any pipeline that needed emergency repairs. So in my mind, the city does not have a current funding to annex in 4,597 acres and develop it. Not only that, I live on Nelson Lane, and if this proposal for Village 5 is annexed in, myself and everyone else on Nelson Lane will have to change their mailing address because they'll have a new Nelson Lane and will be old Nelson Lane. So we'll have to change all our addresses with our banking and other accounts to a new address without even moving. And my husband and I are vehemently opposed to the annexation. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom and Dreary.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I have to say, being a former county supervisor, I'm kind of liking this side of the dais a little more these days than that side. I know these meetings that are very emotional, controversial sometimes, and I just think both sides, I commend you both. With that, I'm the CEO of the Lincoln Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber has supported Village 5 specific plan since it was approved by the City Council in January of 2018. We have remained supportive of the annexation proposal as it was developed. We support the annexation proposal before you primarily because it carries out the vision of the city reflected in the 2008 general plan update, plays a central role in ensuring long-term economic sustainability, and believe it or not, protects landowners who want to farm and have ranching operations on their property. Lastly, the annexation proposal before you is a result of many years of work and collaboration between the city, the county, and many other stakeholders. On behalf of the Lincoln Area Chamber of Commerce, I urge you to vote yes in supporting option 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then Matt Francis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Matt Francois. I'm a land use attorney with Rattan and Tucker. Our firm is counsel for Richland developers. I'm here today to speak in support of the City of Lincoln's annexation of Village 5 and Village 7B. As you know, those areas have long been in the city's sphere of influence and have been planned and zoned for mixed-use development. The annexation is consistent with all the factors set forth in state law. Specifically, the annexation is consistent with the city's general plan. The 2 specific plans will help the city achieve its regional housing needs, and it's a logical extension of the city boundaries. In contrast, denial of the annexation would not be consistent with the sphere of influence or with those state factors. I think it's important to keep in mind, too, while the village contains market rate units, it also is zoned to a density that would allow for lower income housing. And that was specifically called out in the city's housing element that was certified by the state. And that's important that we provide those types of units so that everyone has an opportunity to live in this beautiful area. We asked the city to approve this city's annexation request, or we asked you to approve the city's requested annexation as submitted or embrace option 2. The residents of Rockwell Lane currently have essentially their own water and sewer and storm drain. The county is not providing those services, and they don't appear to desire city services. So the purpose of the policy on the unincorporated islands is to ensure that you're not creating a burden for the county service provider. That's not the case with Rockwell Lane. And the response times in terms of law enforcement, that is our service provider now. The sheriff is providing law enforcement services. There's really no evidence in the record that that will change as a result of the annexation, and I don't think it's reasonable to assume that it would. So staff is recommending option 1 based on its view that there would be significant issues associated with the county providing services to Rockwell Lane. As I mentioned, we simply don't believe that's the case. Those residents are on private wells and septic. The county is not providing those services. There won't be a difference. The members of Rockwell Lane, as are demonstrated here tonight in the larger community, including Neighbor Lane and others, are able to testify and present their views to this body, to the City of Lincoln, as they did with the Village 5 specific plan. They're not being shut out of the process in any way, and they're in no different position than they were when the Village 5 specific plan was adopted by the City of Lincoln. They weren't able to vote in the City Council election there, but they came and they were able to testify and make their views known. So with that, I'd be happy to answer. Our whole team is here. We'd be happy to answer any questions. As you know, land use are within the province of the city and not LAFCO. You decide issues about orderly development. We believe this is a logical and orderly extension of the city boundaries, and we respectfully request your vote in support of option 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the cards that I have. So Aaron, would you like to go next and do your presentation? So Jeremy, if you're in the back, there's another presentation that we want to load up now. I think the commissioners have all received it. There we go.
You gotta be careful if you give me buttons to push.
Okay.
I have a history.
So we'll give you 3-second delay. Yeah. So we'll give you 10 minutes and we'll get that started. Can you run the timer on that? Okay.
So
thank you.
I'm going to be very fast since I have a lot more material than I'm going to be able to cover tonight. Since I appreciate you taking the time to hear me and to at least give us 10 minutes. However, I would like to voice my concern that I'm sure many of the people who didn't raise their hand who wanted to speak were anticipating that I would speak for them, and many
We'll
people
keep
didn't
taking
know
public comment. We can't stop them.
Great.
Yes.
So LAFCO is in charge of encouraging the orderly formation of local governmental agencies, preserve agricultural and open space resources, and discourage urban sprawl. That's a very important mission, and those who are serving on the board are to on behalf of local government shall represent the interests of the public as a whole and not solely the interests of the appointing authority. There's a lot of reasons why we don't feel LAFCO should be voting in favor of this, and I'm going to just skip that synopsis so I can get right into the meat of what I want to say. The city of Lincoln, I want to talk about this island thing first and foremost. It's a concern to me. California law prohibits the creation of islands unless a specific factual justification is provided. Government Code Section 56744 provides, unless otherwise determined by the Commission, territory shall not be incorporated into or annexed to a city pursuant to this division if, as a result, that incorporation or annexation in unincorporated territory is completely surrounded by that city or territory on one or more sides. Government Code 567375, however, does explain that LAFCOs are able to waive the prohibition on the creation of islands if it finds that the application of the restrictions would be detrimental to the orderly development of the community. That's important. That's a really important distinction. Guess what? The Placer County LAFCO's policies regarding the creations of islands are even stricter than the California law, and it repeats it once again. In its LAFCO application, the city unsurprisingly made no attempt to fully explain with specific and factual justification how including the neighbor and Rockwell Lane properties would be detrimental to the orderly development of the community. They simply state that it would be detrimental because the annexation would fail due to our protest vote. They didn't go back any further to back up this statement with facts, case law, or previous similar examples to further prove their point. I frankly wish that I could make bold declarations not based on fact and have everyone around me bow at my command. I have been trying this with my wife for years, and it's never worked yet. So please teach me the ways, City of Lincoln. It is true. Can't multitask. It is true that back in December 2020, the city provided LAFCO a memorandum from the firm Advis and Cucci purporting to justify creating an island based upon LAFCO policies. Their hired lawyer, Mr. Advis, argues that including the Rockwell Lane and Neighbor Lane properties in the annexation would be detrimental to the orderly development of the community because a successful protest vote resulting in denial of the annexation would be detrimental to the orderly development of the city of Lincoln. This standalone circular logic equates to, because I told you so. That may work with small children, but it won't work with us. If we just pause a moment and really unpack this statement, what he's telling us is that anything hindering approval of the annexation of Village 5 is contrary to the orderly development of the community simply because it goes against the city's comprehensive planning document, which is following its own plan. According to this interpretation, the city itself is the jury, judge, and executioner when it comes to defining orderly development within the city's sphere of influence. And if that's the case, why create just one island? Why not several more islands in order to exclude any and all of those troublesome citizens who would dare oppose the city's comprehensive planning? This is a transparent attempt to keep us from participating in the annexation proceedings as required by law. The protest vote was written into law for a reason, so the residents could turn down an annexation proposal if they didn't want to be annexed. Further, Mr. Avis tellingly provides no legal authority supporting this self-proclaimed and circular reasoning, which is inconsistent with the statutory right to participate in a protest vote provided by the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act. Just because some high-priced lawyer says so doesn't necessarily make it so. And frankly, I can't think of a more arrogant and self-absorbed course guaranteed to generate the ire of the county residents who refuse to be steamrolled into subjects. In short, actual case law and Attorney General opinions confirm basic democratic principles and common sense. They say that an agency cannot create an island of unincorporated county area simply to prevent those residents from joining in a protest vote. Gerrymandering, I had to look that up, I remember that from high school days. Gerrymandering is the political manipulation of electoral district boundaries with the intent to create undue advantage for a party, group, or socioeconomic class within the constituency. The city freely acknowledges that it is gerrymandering the annexation boundary in order to avoid a successful protest vote. This tactic is flagrantly unlawful. I've got several of the cases here. The Attorney General has weighed in. He says, we do not believe that the legislature's intended piecemeal annexation as a means to thwart citizen participation in the decision-making process. Look up the case. There are several more cases at the bottom that you can look up of similar circumstances where local municipalities tried shenanigans in order to keep residents from voting on the matter. And when asked LAFCO when LAFCO asked the city attorney she assured the voter disenfranchisement is not at all why they're disincluding Rockwell Lane and Neighbor Lane. We know the city's true motives were plainly stated in the staff report dated September 14, 2021. We've been over that. We talked about how they acknowledged that staff is supportive of current annexation as requested because without cutting us out, it's going to result in a successful denial of the annexation. I just asked, is that right? Would you prefer that if it was you in our shoes? And I love this last one. No Albert is an island. This suggested Rockwell Lane Neighbor Island is not an act of benevolence as suggested by the city of Lincoln. It is cold, calculated strategy to steamroll backed up by hard data. Albert and Connie Schreiber asked the city council in the very beginning of all this to be left out of it, to be left an island. They were flatly denied by city council and told that an island was simply not allowed. It was only when, in 2020, the city and Richland realized they don't have the numbers to ram this through, they conveniently pull out of thin air that an island actually can be created when it suits their needs. They would never have created their proposed island if it didn't support their interests. Your smooth words can say one thing, but your actions tell us everything. They tell the truth. They tell us you'll steamroll one isolated person because you think you can, but when you've got a whole group of people in opposition, you'll reverse course because suddenly you can't, but then spin it in such a way as to say you're being benevolent and doing the will of the people. Shame on your duplicity, City Lincoln. Lying and bullying eventually comes full circle and eviscerates your ability to stand with integrity. It has real consequences because nobody likes a bully. To deny our right to participate in the democratic process as prescribed by law is so un-American it makes my blood boil, my soul cry to God, in the hopes that even a blind man can see how immoral and unjust this island scheme actually is. A protest vote is written in law as a check and balance to annexations and urban sprawl. If the residents feel it's not a good deal for the betterment of the community, we have the legal right to vote it down. It's the law. Really beneficial and necessary at this time is my next slide. This is a key word in the application process. The application asks, in as much detail as possible, explain why this proposal is necessary or beneficial at this time. I want to read your own report. This is LAFCO Resolution 2301, something that you received a little while ago. And it talks about the numbers and how the old model, the city's existing population in 2022 is 51,000. By 2045, the moderate growth scenario estimated that Lincoln could encompass 59,969 people. This represents an average annual growth of 0.85%. The city's 2050 general plan adopted in 2008, based on the previous 2004 SACOG blueprint, anticipates a population of 132,000 at build-out. This is inaccurate, and this is your report still going on. Currently, the city's boundary area supports an average of 2 persons per acre, which is considered low population density. The city's general plan suggests that future growth may occur within city's boundary. Again, the city's general plan suggests that future growth may occur within Lincoln's existing boundary. The city's boundaries contain sufficient land area to accommodate projected growth. What are we even doing here? Your own report states that we've got enough room in the city of Lincoln for the projected growth. The old plan that was adopted years ago, that was when things were going gangbusters and things was awesome. And the city was making so much money you couldn't even see. And where has it gone? We're not confident in the city of Lincoln's ability to manage their finances. We feel they're a Hindenburg. They are on a crash course unless they change correction and start changing their spending habits. And we want nothing to do with it. Wish I had more time. I would talk about police and fire and everything else. It's in my comments for everybody to read, but please vote no. We should go back to the drawing board. If the Lincoln wasn't so cocky, City Lincoln wasn't so arrogant in the beginning, they would have seen the density of people. It's not just Rockwell Lane and Lincoln Lane, Rockwell Lane and Neighbor Lane. I apologize. It is many more residents, and what they're doing is trying to carve us out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and ask those of you who'd like to speak to go ahead and line up here in the center aisle, and we'll just go one right after another. So go ahead, sir.
Okay. My name's Jeff Moore. Gail's my cousin. Moore Road, we've been there a while. So, Rockwell Lane, that was Nicholas Road when I was a kid. When the airport expanded and they added 4 lanes, they made that crazy little road. Why are there a bunch of 5-acre parcels there? You can't divide your property up into little pieces. You guys all have satisfactory pieces of property. You're buffered by the airport. There'll be no development in that area unless you say so. You own it, you don't have to do it. But me and my family, we're supporting proposal number 2. We've been there well over 100 years, as Gail pointed out earlier. If you look at the expansion of Lincoln, it's coming right up Moore Road, right down Ferrari Ranch. If you don't know who the Ferraris are, that was the dairy farmers that used to be on Moore Road. If you don't know that, then you're one of the new people. When I started paying attention to population in my area, Lincoln was 3,000 people, Roseville was 10,000 people, and Rocklin was 3,000 people. It's over 250,000 people now. If you weren't there when Nicholas Lane was 2 lanes, then you're one of the new people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Next. Please line up so we can go relatively quickly, if you don't mind. As somebody sits down, next one jump up. Thank you.
Again, my name is Susan, and I'm in the Village 5 designated area. I just want to talk about some of the points again, which have been brought up. I think Aaron suggested it, but LAFCO, of course, is about discouraging urban sprawl and preserving open space agriculture. So I think the idea of having smart development and taking a look at even, and I don't know whether they are or not, but whatever zoning within City of Lincoln so that they can infill and build up, redo, and reorganize within boundaries, that's something that can be looked at. I would like to say also that in regards to California SB 375, where we're supposed to be reducing, I guess, the greenhouse gases and whatnot, some of the other county LAFCOs have actually brought into the idea that having smart growth versus urban sprawl, so that they are looking at their density within different projects as a way to comply with SB 375. And I'm not confident that allowing for the urban sprawl is going to stop people from driving their cars in the area that we live. And then I know some people nowadays, like it's been brought up, convenient or will be able to work. I work from home. So I think that the idea of the people that already live there, working wherever they're already living, and I know one of the businesses in Lincoln where I actually sometimes interact with some of their employees drive in from other places. So I don't know that it's a valid argument that we will be able to get people to work and live within a little community. And again, I'm opposed to having a CFD area applied, and I know it's not taxation without representation, but I will just say it feels like taxation without representation to just go into that as well. So I think that you guys have heard quite a bit, and that those are just the main points. The last thing being that I still would say that the uses of and access to the village open space preserve and the village open space natural, being that city council voted those would be controlled by the PCCP, which at the time didn't exist. The PCCP does currently exist, and still there have been no regulations written as to what are the accesses to and uses of the village open space natural and the village open space preserve, which means that the general public still hasn't had time to research, look at, or comment on all the specifics of the plan. I have that area designated in my yard. I don't know specifically, am I allowed to drive equipment over there? Can I build a goat house? Can I build a secondary dwelling if it meets other code requirements? You know, there's a lot of questions that I have, and I think that they haven't been answered. So that's something else to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Connie Schreiber. I live in actually Village 5 and Village 7. We have property in both. My husband and I, Albert, we've been opposing this. He was talking about the general plan way back when, opposing how they were doing it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I don't know that I've heard anybody else talk about, but maybe people don't have experience with. So we used to own the property that's now Sud B on the other side of the freeway, and the Caltrans would not give us access. We begged. We figured the city didn't want us to have access because they didn't want cows in their city, whatever. So we had property at the end of 1st and 3rd Street, and we had property all along 1st Street. So I know you guys, well, not you guys, Lincoln thinks this ag overlay is just the best thing since sliced bread. We went to all those meetings. We said this is not a good plan. This is not going to work for a lot of reasons. Let me explain my experience, our experience of living with Cityots right across the fence line from us. So we go into our field one day because we're, doing irrigation. There's a swing in our tree, in our field, okay? We go in another time. There's a tent in our field, a big tent. And there were kids in there, and I'm like, give me an adult. And so they went to one of the houses, brought a guy back, and he said, well, my daughter was having a sleepover, and they wanted to, go in your field. And so we had a tent in our field. I said, oh, I didn't know that's how that worked. So when my kids have kid friends over, we can swim in your pool. Pack it up, kids. Get home. Kids on bikes chasing our cows. Cows will turn, and they're lucky they didn't get trumped. When we were trying to do our irrigation, which was just on the other side of the fence from the houses, they threw their dog poop over their fence onto our irrigation. We have to try and turn irrigation valves, but first we have to move the dog poop aside. Or their brush, they trimmed their trees over the fence it went. Or when they're building, the nails in our field that we did hay in. They don't blow there. None of that stuff blows there. They have no regard. They don't understand rural life. So that's why we got rid of that area, because we couldn't utilize it. We couldn't access it. So people think that this is a good idea to put ag right up next to subdivisions. As soon as the city council starts listening to all these people whine, ag overlay is going to be gone. Another thing that I heard, I think it was Mr. Scully mentioned, is they're going to be realigning Nelson Lane into Fitiment. So we went through the, sorry, I had 2 more seconds and I'll wrap it up. We went through the Lincoln bypass. That was HELL, I'm telling you, for years. So we made it so our property would have that intersection right there. That's what they agreed to. That's what Caltrans agreed to. When I brought it up at the city council meetings, when they said, oh, it's just conceptual that it's going to be realigned. And I told them, conceptualize it right back to our property, because that's a problem for our property. So to me, I find it interesting that the alignment just happens to go to the developer's property if I looked at the map correctly. I think that's a problem. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Albert Schreiber. Time. Oh my gosh. Oh, is that a Freudian slip?
Yeah, that was an accident, we promised. Hi, Albert.
Albert Schreiber, Village 5, Village 7. First, I'd like to say, as far as the ag overlay goes that my wife just mentioned, you didn't hear the city manager mention the ag overlay, because with the ag overlay, ag may stay in place according to the city for perpetuity, which means their plan of build out will never possibly happen, which means their funds will never happen the way they project them. That being said, you know, we're all in favor of killing this project, but if that's not on the agenda today, then number one option, so that the people behind me have a chance to vote and have their vote counted. That being said, if you vote for option 2, it would have the purpose and effect of preventing the excluded Village 5 residents from joining with us to exercise their statutory right to successfully protest the Village 5 annexation. That being said, I'm going to go through some of Aaron's presentation. This is the overbuilding and gambling. The city's reliance on its inaccurate 2050 general plan population predictions mean that the developer impact fees are too low to fund the infrastructure that will be required for the essential city services. The city has refused to provide a peer review of its nexus study that would very likely reveal its this giveaway to Richland through reduced impact fees, and will result in a significant funding gap that will need to be addressed many years down the road through either a taxpayer bailout or a reduced infrastructure services. In addition, the extended ag overlay olive branch may be likely further retard the build-out process and slow desperately needed developer impact fees, kind of what I was just saying earlier. Indeed, some of the rural residents may choose to never sell to a developer and continue to farm, and thus today's deeply discounted development fees won't be near enough for infrastructure and services down the road, since the city spends money like water. Why then is the city so eager to adopt Village 5 rural lands right now? Follow the money. They are desperate. Rather than tightening their belts to live within their means now, they are gambling using a destructively irresponsible strategy of trying to grow into their current expenses, using developer funds to kick the can further down the road, rather than doing the fiscally responsible but very painful and hard thing, cutting expenses as to live within their means today. As we as individual families and small businesses must live within our current means, to do otherwise would be unwise. I'll wrap it up here. Why can't the city of Lincoln and so many other government entities seem to do this? As a people, we are taxed to death and have had it with the wasteful and reckless government spending. The city's current finances are a Ponzi scheme, and that is why the city is pushing so hard to get this passed. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or good evening. I guess I can say good evening.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I live in the Rockwell Lane part that's not, or I guess it could be on the proposal today. We thought it wasn't when we walked in the door. But, so I just want to point out that we live in this community for a certain reason. My husband, when we were looking to buy a property, and yes, we're new to the community, but we worked our ass off to be able to afford that property. And we got it exactly where we wanted it. My husband is a active deputy sheriff for Sacramento County. We chose this place and he commutes over an hour to work, 1, for our safety, 2, because we wanted this community and we wanted it how it was. Is it inconvenient for us to drive that far? Absolutely. Would I choose to go anywhere else? Absolutely not. I chose where I wanted because it's the community that we have, the community that we are a part of. My husband and his coworkers come over to our backyard and they practice their nighttime shooting in our backyard. And if we are annexed into the city and you have that ag overlay, we no longer could do that, or we would have to provide notice. But I cannot provide notice of the coyote that we shot 3 days ago going across my backyard because it was going right after Susan's chickens. So unless I want to just let her animals die or let them come after my horses or my livestock, I'm not going to be able to give notice of those things. It's the way of life, it's the way of our community, and it's different. And I understand it's different. We have the airport. You know, people don't want to live under the airport. I don't care about being under the airport because I have the land that I want and I can do what I want on it. So I know there's a development is something that is going to happen. It needs to happen. It's part of the growth. It's part of the expansion of the community, expansion of the town. I'm not denying that in any way, shape, or form. But I also feel like this is a very large piece to chomp off at one, over 4,000 acres. And they were saying it's going to provide 11,000 jobs, but it's also affecting almost 10,000 people. It was like 8,900 people in that. So, I mean, is it really worth it to add 11,000 jobs to then inhibit the lives of that many people? I understand some people are for it, but a lot of people have moved out to that community or have been there for a very long time. I'm fortunate to be a new member, and I'm thankful that they've accepted me as a new member of this community. But, I mean, as much as I love it, I'm afraid of what can be taken away from them, and that's not fair.
Thank you. Thank you. Council member.
Hi.
Hi.
Madam Chair, Council, or Commissioners. I just want to speak really quickly. I'm Holly Andriotta, Lincoln City Council. Ever since I was elected to council, every time Village 5 has come before us, I've always been the lone no vote. I'm not a fan, never been a fan. I've always been very public about that. I share a lot of the same concerns that these people do here, but I'm really not standing here to try to sway you one way or the other. I know that the city's all for it, but there's a couple comments that were made that I really feel need to be addressed. First of all, Mr. Scully is the city manager, and all of you know, because you've all sat on city councils before, when the council votes, the city manager's job is to carry out their will. And so he's just doing his job. He doesn't have personal feelings one way or the other. He does care about these people. And so I don't appreciate slights against Mr. Scully because he's just doing his job. I am concerned if this goes through how we will provide police and fire. But for what we have right now, our police and fire respond very quickly. They take care of us very well. And so the comment that, oh, their response times are horrible, that's not true. They do a great job, and I felt the need to defend them. And my last comment is maybe 5, 6, 10, 15 years ago, Lincoln was the Hindenburg. They were spending money recklessly. They didn't have good accounting, but that's not the case anymore. We're not the Hindenburg. We've done a lot of hard work over the last 5 or 6 years. Our finances are completely overhauled. Lincoln has the most transparency of any city in the region. Sean Scully is the best city manager we've ever hired. Nita Racker is the best financial director we've ever had. Our finances are solid. Yeah, we don't have enough tax money because of things Sean Scully has said. We have tax bleed and all of that, but we are solid. Yeah, some of our roads still need work, but I personally made sure that East Avenue has been worked on. We do the best we have with the resources that we have, just like every other city in this region. So no, I'm not a fan of Village 5, but Lincoln's not the Hindenburg. We are not spending recklessly. We are running a tight ship, and I'm proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
I've been called worse.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if we should just give Jeremy a couple of minutes to.
And take a break now, you're suggesting?
Yes, I'm just worried that people online aren't able to participate.
We can't continue as long as this is happening, so we need to get it reconnected. Why don't we go ahead and did you want to take a longer break right now, or just do a 10-minute break?
Either way,
Jeremy says we lost network.
Okay, so he'll keep working on it. Let's pause for minimum 10-minute break,
okay.
and then we'll check in and see if we can continue. Thank you.
I won't go over all of the points that I said in my letter. I do just want to reiterate a few of the points. The first being, there's been some talk about the need for infrastructure in the area if development were to happen. Obviously development would pay for that. More importantly, the regional infrastructure that we need is predicated on following through with the well thought out long-term plan that the county, that the city, regionally, that South Placer has put forward. And while as an association we do not take a position on any individual project or entitlement, we do believe strongly in the overall plan within the South Placer community. It is one of the major growth areas in our region, and would just ask that that plan be kept in mind when you're making these important decisions. Obviously, the homes that will come into this area, however that happens, will contribute tremendously to, for instance, the South Placer Transportation Planning Agency. Those fees are necessary for the expansion of Highway 65. Without the growth, that needed expansion won't happen. That's just, we already heard from PCWA, it's a similar situation with water. We need the growth to pay for the infrastructure. That's the way California works, unfortunately, with how expensive infrastructure is. So that's my position. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mike Garabedian, Placer County. Tomorrow, I've got 4 points just listening to people I wanted to kind of get introduced here. One, about the Williamson Act map. You need to show, after I interpreted and enforced the Williamson Act for 4.5 years, you need to show any adjacent Williamson Act contracts on the outside of the zone, and also in case any outside that might be influenced by what's going on with the contracts and areas in there. So, the 3 cities we have and the county we have are all developing like crazy and going like crazy, and I don't know if the LAFCO can do something about that, but nobody's doing anything about it. And something needs to be done. I lived in Solano County for 12 years a while back, and their LAFCO had a policy of no development except in the incorporated areas, in the municipalities. I mean, it's bad enough to have it they're going like wildfire here. And, there are some, you have a policy in your LAFCO, your own LAFCO rules that says spheres of influence in rural areas. It's in your rules, and it'd be good to do some work to figure out how to protect the rural areas that have, that are affected like that. So the main problem here is we're over capacity at the highways. And the proposal that some of you are working on for next year or involved in or improved who are elected is to take another ballot measure to try to increase the sales tax to build all these highways. Well, the research all shows that adding capacity does not relieve congestion. There's just no way adding more lanes to 65 or a couple new ways out to 99 are going to relieve capacity, and I can hand out the report from UC Transportation about that. So I want to talk about the Placer County Conservation Plan, because if anybody here, on there or out here, doesn't know exactly what the Placer Conservation Plan is, you're out of something. You're out of luck. You really don't know what's going on, because this, as well as other developments and this annexation, if you read through that stuff, you learn that they're using the PCCP to allow development to do that, in what I call ecosystem level destruction. Under the state law, you're supposed to have, what's it called? It's ecological areas that are set aside and reserved for the purpose of conservation. And of course, ranching is perfectly consistent with a lot of this land that's being converted to development. So People here need to know what it is, how it affects their property, and some people are discovering that if they want to add a house or something for their growing family, they might be faced with huge fees just to do that, even though they're not doing any other developing. And I think the fellow's in the back room there who runs that thing, Greg McKenzie. So everybody who wants to understand what's really going on here and why development is going crazy without being modified or adjusted, it's the Placer County Conservation Plan that's doing that, and that is really a disaster for this county. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tejman, 4090 Nicholas Road, just outside of Lincoln. I moved here about 10 years ago, so I'm a newcomer. My background is I grew up in Yuba City, Yuba City High School. I served on Yuba City Council a couple of terms, Planning Commission, LAFCO chair, and a lot of that. And I appreciate having what you're going through is having to sit there and do your job. So I really get it, all the comments from my neighbors. By the way, I'm not in the annexation part. I'm on the border. I'm just right outside of I'm on the Nicholas Road on the northern side. I understand all these frustrations, and there's a lot of challenges in life, in growth. The world continues to grow. When my grandfather was a little kid, the world population was 1 billion. When my kid was born, it was 6 billion. Every city, every town, every community has grown. Whether you're here in Lincoln or my little village in India where I grew up, they're all grown. And there were no developers in the little village in India. It just grew because they all had kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. We need to build houses. If we don't want houses, if we don't want traffic on freeways, we don't want busy streets in our neighborhoods, the solution is to quit having kids. And that's not a great solution. So obviously we continue to grow. And if we're gonna grow, I'd rather have a managed growth than just a wild sprawl, wherever, whoever, whatever, however. Planned growth, projects, you get infrastructure done right. This project, it's gonna impact all these people's lives negatively. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Lives are not gonna be as good as they are. But that's the price we pay for growth. That's a fact. Every town is growing. If you don't grow, you die. I'll give you an example of the neighborhood I grew up in, Yuba City, Marysville. Marysville, it's limited for growth by its boundaries. It cannot grow. Yuba City is growing. Marysville used to have all the car dealerships, had all the stores and Montgomery wards and everything. Has nothing. Has no car dealerships. Is struggling for sales tax dollar. And by the way, your city manager is absolutely right. You can't live off of just property taxes. You need sales tax. Yuba City is thriving because that's where all the local shopping for Yuba and Sutter County is done. And Marysville is dying. And that's just the fact of life. You're either growing or you're dying. And the world, I'll finish in 30 seconds. World population is growing and we all need a place to live. I bet nobody's living in the same house that our grandfathers or great parents were living in. We're living in houses in land that was once open land, wild land, forest land, farmland. So I hate it too, but it keeps changing. I wish I can go back to the streets where we didn't have to worry about. My dog was hit on Nicholas Road by a car. It's the price we pay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony Frazier with Frazier Design Group, representing a couple owners, already submitted letters of support from them, but there were some items I think you missed tonight. Although this was a great speech, I really liked it. I thought to come and speak and encourage you to vote yes on option 2. And really one of the reasons, we've been working in Lincoln for years and years. This general plan was adopted, over 15 years ago. And the general public was invited again and again to really manage this growth in Lincoln and make sure that things are set up in order. And village after village, we've been coming to annex and make sure that we follow a general plan that allows the city to grow in a logical way, in a good way. Many people in Lincoln, they really regret going out of Lincoln to shop and really find what they want. And without the growth, without adding rooftop, without adding commercial center ability to grow, that will never happen. So in fairness for everybody that bought already in Lincoln, after the general plan, they already knew about the general plan, they already bought into this new city sphere. And in reality, the sphere, since we started, even shrunk in some places. So it was even bigger. But if you don't end up with 5 planned as planned by the city, what would you end up with? Another Bickford Ranch outside of the city, but yet under the county. Because you cannot stop development, it has to grow. So I'd rather it grow within the city so we can allow them to get the proper tax dollars, even for the areas that was built before the proper tax dollar been divided between county and city. This new development is going to help them balance it out. That's going to help the existing development. And the city of Lincoln doing something big, we don't like it in the development community, but they're charging more taxes to be able to maintain these roads. So it's a different than the old ways. So you're maintaining what you're building. It's ongoing things that any developer building have to do that. So there is no just let's do it. It's orderly development. It's following general plan. People been waiting the process. I know I heard some people, we're rushing. We keep saying rushing. We've been working on projects, even in this area, for over 10 years. Some project takes 15, 20 years to do. And sometimes you see it to the finish line, sometimes not. The open space, City of Lincoln is really, we always complain, but we do it, 40% open space. So any landowner wants to develop cannot really do the whole development, has to set aside, following PCCP, following City of General Plan. So there's no other city does this. And they did it way in advance. Everybody has to follow through it to make sure there's a preservation for the open space. So I can talk forever, but really encourage you to vote yes on option 2. Many people are not here that they will agree to it, but most of the time you get only people saying no, right? People active because they don't like something. People that they like it, they're busy doing other things because they think it's going to pass. So I appreciate you listening to us and making sure that you balance all the facts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marie Zambrana, and a gentleman got up earlier and said something about the second proposed option, how he was taking they were taking Rockwell Lane area out, and that they didn't really need the services that the city provides because they have a well and septic, sewer system, their own. But all of these people here have a well and a septic on their properties. And so I'm against the proposed annexation. As Ms. Connie Schreiber said, the proposed ag overlay does not protect the current landowners in any way, does not give them any type of security against future councils taking that ag overlay away. And additionally, there is, this gentleman talked about the open space requirement. And as the plan is written, currently, there, 40% is open space is what, the law provides, it requires. And the Richlands properties have only approximately 14% designated as open space. So the open space on the current plan that's being proposed, most of that open space is taken from many of us private landowners, not necessarily taken from, but it will limit what we can do on our own private property because it would be now designated as open space. The Schreiber and the Reese families have, approximately, lost my train of thought. Albert and Connie's Village 5 property has approximately 48% of their property is designated as open space. And there are several other, most of us have some property, some of our property is designated as open space. I would venture to say that most of the people here don't want this to go through, but I know you guys have to take a vote tonight. And you have option 1 or option 2. And as a Rockwell Lane resident, I want to vote. I want to have a vote on this. And so I would hope that you would consider option one over option 2 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We need a microphone for this gentleman. We need a microphone.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Byron Chapman. I live in Lincoln. I do not reside in the property that's up for annexation right now. Certainly do not agree with the annexation of it, and here's a couple of reasons as to why. The City of Lincoln has demonstrated since the last 12 years that I've lived there that it has been very, very difficult in order to maintain or even get up to the number of first responders, police officers, firefighters, maintain all the city roads and not just some. Sewer plant now is asking for more money because it's about out of capacity. All these things are signs that, well, they could be running better and they're not even close. I want you to think about this for just a moment. Of all of the towns and cities that you've ever gone to, and they put in the sidewalks, the cement, the slabs for the houses, they put down the asphalt for the roads, they put in the sewer pipes. Then as time moves on, something happens. As someone else here had mentioned that, well, the neighborhood starts to change. Well, it's time to move. And they do. City of Lincoln has a very, very old population in the city, and they try to maintain that as well as possible. But that's the course of it. People move. They don't maintain what they have. I would challenge anyone in this room to come up with a city that once everyone decided we no longer want to live here, with the parking lots, the sidewalks, the streets, and so forth, let's tear up the sidewalks. Let's tear up the asphalt. Let's tear up all the cement slabs that we've put down and restore those and get the soil back that we covered up. Unfortunately, we don't do that. Why do we want to go out and lay more asphalt, more cement, and all the other entities that go into the ground? And for whatever reasons, they no longer are raising farms, taking care of animals that we consume, all the things that we have and that we want. And on top of all of that, you've got people here that have history in that area. Your job here this evening isn't to decide whether it's a right idea or the wrong idea. Your job, as my understanding, is to determine whether the City of Lincoln can annex that and provide fire department, police officers, good streets, sewer plant, water. At this point in time, if you look at the record, we're not even close to that. If they can't do it now, how are they going to do it once that land goes in? And that's your decision. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us out to speak. My name is Sean Maxim. My land is next to the Cal Fire Station out on Nicholas, so right on the edge of Village 5. I purchased this land for one specific reason. It was not in the city, and it's zoned for agriculture. So when you have land that's zoned agriculture, you have to think in the long term. So thinking 5 years ahead is insufficient, generally. With what's being proposed here in this plan, I guess I should be clear up front. First, I don't like the plan. I prefer you oppose it. If you do want to continue forward with it, please choose option 1 because everyone who's affected should have their voice heard. But to continue on with what I was saying, the agricultural zoning in the county is different than what an ag overlay would be from the city. The city can change that at any time. And so how does that affect people like me that on purpose purchase this area to think in these long 20-year time plans? It becomes more of a gamble and less of a plan. And if I wanted to gamble, I probably wouldn't be in agriculture. And so I think to best serve the constituents of this area, we should keep that in mind for the longer term planning that all of us have done already and that we would like to continue to do. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ron Waterland, and I live at 550 Nelson Lane. And just some personal thoughts, and then I would like to just cover a couple of bullet points from the presentation that didn't get to be covered. I don't know, we've all been at this, 15 years plus now, just to get to where we're at today? Yeah, what a frustration. I mean, it's like, it's like a human being trying to wrestle an 800-pound gorilla. Some of the most successful things I've seen in life and working with an amazing city in Rancho Cordova, who's very award-winning, they take things in a very phased approach. If we're successful at phase A, we move on to phase B, or we relook at it to phase C. And it's like, and then you have I think a much better buy-in from the general public who represent agriculture, all the different phases of how people want to live their lives. But I think the City of Lincoln's proposal still has many questions to be answered. You as the LAFCO board, what a mind-boggling thing you have to do to make this kind of a decision. And I don't think you should rely wholly on the City of Lincoln or Richland or your staff. Each of you individually need to read the 14-page letter dated September 1st, 2023 that the Schreiber Legal Counsel emailed to you. Really dive into it. It's not that difficult of a read and exposes a lot of unanswered questions. It's your job to demand from the city, LAFCO's legal counsel and staff for legitimate and well thought out answers to these hard questions before even considering a vote. We are depending on you to not simply do the easy thing and rubber stamp this annexation because somebody told you that they've checked all the boxes already. Has the city provided you with a concrete plan showing the funds it will need to provide future police, fire, and other infrastructure? Or have they arrogantly brushed that off by telling you that once you approve, then they will do the work that is supposed to require by law that it be done before annexation approval? Their prior and current financial track record should tell you how well they can be trusted holding the checkbook. It's an inconvenient fact that the words in the world can't explain someone out of a situation they've behaved themselves into. We urge you to make the City of Lincoln follow the law and provide you with the information you requested of them in their final MSR before you ever consider voting on this matter. The city's financial urgency is not your problem. They can sleep in their beds all they want. We urge you to consider all of these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Gustafson, Commissioners, my name is George Phillips. I'm here this evening on behalf of Bert and Deirdre Lefty and Bonnie Ferreira. They are the owners of the Auburn Ravine Ranch on Moore Road. I handed something out to you because they are the parcel that Ms. McIntyre was talking about earlier that needs a lot line adjustment before they can actually be annexed. So I wanted to highlight that issue, and I wanted to thank Ms. McIntyre for taking time and going over this with us, Commissioner Landon for conversations that she helped us pull together to answer some questions and concerns we had, and also I wanted to thank the folks at Richland and how receptive and open they've been in talking through solutions on how to correct, which really has become kind of an inadvertent mistake in the process. The family wants to express their strong support for option number 2 and moving forward this evening with the annexation of this area to Village 5 to the City of Lincoln. And the reason for that is the family actively farms and grazes the ranch on Moore Road. They intend to do so into the indefinite future. And they've tried and have weighed very seriously what this decision means for them as a family, just like those that you've heard from this evening. And what does the future hold for them ultimately in continuing on what they do? And they're aware of what the general plan provides and the direction that the city has been headed since 2008. They're aware of the specific plan process that took place with the city and the intentions for this area in Village 5 to ultimately urbanize. They're aware of the ag overlay and how that's supposed to function. They're relying on that for their, again, that indefinite future, because they are going to continue to farm and graze their property, and they're still going to own land adjacent to Village 5, but outside the annexation area. So they're looking at this whole issue very seriously and trying to be realistic about what the future holds and what is the best decision for their family. And weighing all those things, they believe it is appropriate for this property to be annexed into the city of Lincoln. They're looking at all these policy documents. We're talking, you've heard a lot of testimony this evening about the city's general plan, the specific plan, the request for a sphere expansion, annexation, the MSR in support of that, the PCCP that assumes development within Village 5, and therefore the regulatory agencies understand that development will occur in Village 5. And they look at all that policy direction. This is not something that came up last week. This is an issue that has been in the process by the city, as has been outlined in the documents to you this evening, for 15 years. And they're being realistic as to what that all means. And so they're very appreciative of the efforts of Richland. They're very appreciative of the efforts of Lincoln. We've identified in our conversations with Richland and the city a way to correct this anomaly on the parcel line, and we will process a lot line adjustment with Placer County and then come back with you, hopefully to you, on another cleanup item to correct that boundary issue. But we are supportive of you moving forward with option 2 this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room would like to address the commission?
Hello there, council members. My name is Ammon. Nice to meet all of you. I am also a resident of the Village 5 area, and I just wanted to come forward and say, as you can see, the people that live within the Rockwell Lane Neighbor Lane community are asking not to be islanded so that they can have their voice heard. And I just implore you guys and ask you, please vote option 1 so that these people can have their voices heard. And please just don't let this, this robotic corporate entity just take over everything that these people have. And just thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. They're not laughing at you. They're laughing because a gentleman in the back kept jumping up, but he has to keep sitting down.
I'm
Anyway.
coming up.
Okay.
My name is Wendell Wechter. I'm Rockwell Lane. I moved here to this area in the early 90s, and I moved from the Bay Area, and I'm not going to get into what political affiliation. When I moved here to this area, I loved it. I loved the area. I loved everything this area provided, the atmosphere, the people. You could totally tell the difference between the Bay Area and here. Met my wife at Sierra College. We ended up living out in Lincoln, and I fell in love with Lincoln. I enjoy living where we live, where we have open space, where we can do as we please. I just feel that we're being choked, is what it looks like. If you look at the map, it looks like, if you can imagine hands around that area choking us. That's the way I feel. I don't want to feel choked. I want to live in an area where we're free to do what we please. We enjoy our area. I guess I'm still not clear on the option 1, option 2. I think that, you know, if we want to be able to stand up and say where we want to be, I guess it's option one. We just want to be able to do what we want to do and live the way we've been living. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nick Greco. I'm currently retired. I moved to Lincoln in 1970. I was a sharecrop farmer in western Placer County. I farmed up to 12 parcels of land for different landowners. My property is at 680 South Dowd Road, and I would like to encourage you to vote yes on this proposal and option 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room who would like to make public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay. Those of you online, thanks for rejoining us. I'm sorry for the delays we've had, but thank you for rejoining. I see a couple hands up. Amy, so can you call on those?
Chris Chambers.
Chris Chambers?
Good evening, Council. My name is Chris Chambers, and I'm a Rockwell Lane resident. I have not lived here as long as many of my neighbors, but I chose, as well as my family chose, to come out here for the quality of life in what the country brought to us. Now, I have no objections to areas that want to be incorporated. My area, my neighborhood, as you've heard, is not interested in this annexation. However, if we are to have a vote tonight, I would also choose option 1 so that this entire community and the communities surrounding it have the opportunity to vote and be part of this very important decision. Look, I think everybody understands growth happens. I think the gentleman much earlier spoke about population and how population has continued to boom. I would agree with him, but I would also agree with many others that say, hey, look, go at a pace that you can afford and you can lay out. This country is experiencing extreme inflation. There is a rise in homelessness. There's a rise in crime. This area does not have a lot of the issues that other areas do. I think Lincoln is a fine city. I have nothing bad to say about the infrastructure or anything that they are doing. However, I prefer the services that I am provided by the county. There's nothing wrong with them. Should you choose to annex this area, we already have our infrastructure. So for us, are we to be taxed for infrastructure that wouldn't be brought to us? Is Richland intending to bring in the sewer and the water to each one of our properties? Or are they going to cut it off on Nelson? I implore you, please look at not accepting the annexation, and should you, allow us to have a vote in that and choose option 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Nick has his hand up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I appreciate the time this evening. Yeah, we kind of had some technical difficulties there, a lot of anxiety on this side of the internet, but in any event, thank you again. My name is Nick Aptis. I'm with the law offices of Aptis and Cucci in Sacramento on behalf of Richland. I just want to touch on a couple of comments made earlier by folks at the podium. I know a lot's been said about the overall project, and certainly your staff and your attorney have counseled you relative to your authority as the commission, not being a land use agency. And I really want to focus in on the issue of the creation of islands. There is a memo in your package that goes obviously significantly more in depth. but I just wanted to highlight just a few things for the benefit of your board and the public. So first off, I think we all acknowledge that LAFCO is permitted to create islands. While discouraged, state law does allow it, and your local rules do allow it specifically and explicitly for two separate reasons. If a denial would be detrimental to the orderly development of the city of Lincoln is one reason, or whether including the proposed island would defeat the annexation. You're only required to meet one of those two to justify legally the creation of an island. You've already heard from the city and others regarding the detriment to the orderly growth envisioned in the city's general plan that's been the better part of 2 decades in the making. As to the latter part, the simple fact is the policy allows leaving people alone that want to be left alone while balancing the needs of the city in pursuing that orderly development that's roadmapped in the general plan. All that is to say, if the Rockwell Lane folks want to be considered in an annexation, that's not precluded. They can do that as part of a separate application, and that's their prerogative. But to insist on being included in the current application just to defeat it is exactly why your rules allow the creation of islands. Thanks again, and I would urge you to support option 2 this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online? Please raise your hand and we will unmute you to speak. I'm not seeing any other hands go up. You?
I just want to hear case law from his last comments. I'd like to see it. There's no case law.
Okay, so I don't see any other public comments. Anyone else in the room want to address the board one more time? We don't want to cut it off. You've been patient with us, so. Yes, sir.
My name's John Sullivan. I live on Rockwell Lane. I was driving down Blue Oak going west, and all there was is houses, developments all the way down for miles. I come back and I went down Moore Road, and there were these beautiful farms, rice paddies, orchards, and beautiful country that it would be a shame to destroy. And it'd be a shame to have a Galleria in Lincoln or a auto mall in Lincoln. It's a city, a beautiful city now, but I don't think you need to destroy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm not seeing others, so I'm going to close the public comments and come back to the commission. And actually, first, I wanted to see if staff or the applicant had any issues that were raised that they want to clarify. We can then go to the commissioners and see.
I do not know.
Okay, and I'm seeing you say, okay, so commissioners.
Could I just specifically ask, though, as far as any of the legal opinions or the legal advice that was taken tonight in testimony?
I have nothing to add to that, with one exception, but I'll first confirm that LAFCO does have the authority to approve an annexation that creates an island. That's set forth in your staff report. However, you do have to make a specific finding in order to do that. Right now, the proposed resolution doesn't contain that specific finding, so if your commission were to approve the proposal as proposed and thereby create an island, we will need to add that language to the proposed resolution, and I can give you that language at the time your discussions get to that point, if they get to that point. But otherwise, I have nothing to add at this point.
Okay.
I had one other request. We have heard an awful lot of testimony. We've had an awful lot of material to absorb. I think it would be helpful, and perhaps we could do our business here tonight more quickly, if we just start at the end of one of this table and start discussing the things that are on your mind as we look at this. You follow what I mean? That's what we do. Where are we? What do people think?
I do have a question, actually, about cleanup items. Is if the annexation moves forward, is cleanup items, can they be addressed later, or do they have to be addressed especially when you're considering
Yes,
certain
some of
parcels?
the items that were specifically raised by staff tonight need to be addressed tonight. So for instance, if you are going to amend the proposal area with respect to the two properties that are co-owned, where one is in right now and one is out, to either put them both in or put them both out, that should happen tonight. There's some other language that, as I referenced a moment ago, we would need to address tonight. The cleanup is intended to be more of the clerical sort and that sort of thing that you're empowering the executive officer to do after your board takes action.
Sorry, Commissioner Alpine, were you speaking about the 310-acre parcel that half was included in the specific plan but excluded from the annexation?
Correct. Would that have to be addressed tonight, or is that because the parcel has not?
It would have to be addressed tonight, and one way or the other. I mean, you could leave it the way it is, and part is in and part is out, but if you want to have them both treated equally, you would have to address that tonight, or otherwise, if part's left out, it would require another annexation application to put that part in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Does anybody want to volunteer to go first, or Susan?
I would be willing
Okay.
to share. Oh, thank you very much. I'd be willing to share the things that have been on my mind as I've read the materials and listened to the testimony tonight and read the letters of comment from people, which I do appreciate very much. First of all, I have to say that I do respect the staff's recommendation to go with option 1, amending the boundaries to bring Rockwell in. After all, that would be the perfect world solution here. And I don't expect the LAFCO staff to come in and make compromises and value judgments that really should be left to the commission. And so I don't have a question with your recommendation. I think it's pure application of LAFCO. I think that there are some issues that we are more able to deal with, and that the legislature has given us the ability to do that. And I think we should. But here are some of my concerns. When I was reading the materials, it troubled me greatly that the Lincoln General Fund was going to take on the obligation to provide services to an area that would be outside of the annexation if Rockwell was left out. That just did not seem right to me. I'm a former mayor, and that troubled me a great deal. And then I appreciate the materials that staff has provided me and the testimony have given me, particularly the overlay for the airport over the Rockwell property, and seeing what the existing zoning is and seeing how much is in the floodplain gives me a comfort level that the risks associated with Lincoln taking on any responsibilities in the Rockwell area, if that area were to be left out, is a much lesser scale than another issue that I had as I looked at the materials. I am very familiar with the specific plan process. In my professional life, I'm retired now. In my term of office as a member of a city council, I understand that comprehensive planning, and I understand that the city of Lincoln went through that process. There were public meetings. I don't believe that we're here to offer you a referendum of the land use decision that the city of Lincoln has made. I think that if we don't recognize that Rockwell is a unique issue and should be an island, that other areas are going to develop in a piecemeal fashion that will not serve that community, that neighborhood, ever. You can have piecemeal county development all around the city of Lincoln's borders, and you as landowners in the area that would not be annexed have absolutely nothing to protect you from the things that are allowed by zoning by the county on your property. So I think the comprehensive planning that the city of Lincoln has proposed, while I understand it's controversial, and I don't like making people unhappy, but I think that it is the better route to go. So I support the option 2. I'd like to see those 2 property issues be taken care of as best we can tonight in a final motion. And I also want you to know that I appreciate you do still have an opportunity to move forward. If we make a decision to move either the whole annexation area or leaving Rockwell out, those people in that plan area have the protest process to continue to have your voice heard. So we're not locking you out of your opportunity. That's what I wanted to share with you and also my fellow commissioners. And I think that we owe ourselves a strong conversation about this and to make a decision tonight for these folks.
Thank you, Commissioner Rohan. Commissioner Landon, your light on?
Yes, it is. I have a number of thoughts, so you may just want to grab a Coke and some popcorn, because I have quite a few things that I want to say, so I will try and be as concise as I can be. I have a feeling I might be on the minority here. Well, first I want to commend the city of Lincoln, because I absolutely 100% agree with what Councilmember Andreatta said, that they have come leaps and bounds and have done amazing work in the city to bring things up to par. And I mean, things aren't perfect, but of course things aren't perfect at the county either. They're not perfect anywhere, and I think they've just done such a great job. And Sean is an amazing city manager who I respect and honor. And so I've spent the last few months really delving into Village 5 and what are the implications. I've met with people who don't want to be annexed. I went with people who do want to be annexed. I drove out to Rockwell Lane this weekend with my husband, and we drove down all the way to the end. I was a little worried because it said this is not a turnaround, do not go down to the end. But I drove down anyway. I went down Neighbor Lane, really trying to get all of the information, because I believe that my job is to take everything and then make the best decision from what I see as being the best decision. So I have been torn, because I obviously am, for the folks in Rockwell Lane, the only elected representative for them, and that weighs heavily on me. But I also want to be a great partner for the city of Lincoln. I love Lincoln. I want them to thrive. I know how important it is for them to have commercial development and to have those sales tax dollars. It's vital. But I've heard on one side, this has to happen right now because the city needs this to happen right now. And on the flip side of that, I've heard it doesn't have to happen right now. It doesn't have to be 4,500 acres at this very moment. And I've really struggled with the idea of an island. I just look at it and I picture 20 years down the road when our deputy sheriffs are driving miles through the city limits and stopping at stoplights in order to get to this little island to provide their service. It just, to me, feels wrong, I guess. And so I think as difficult as it is for me to say, because like I said, I want to do what the city wants to do. I really do. But I think the libertarian streak in me is like, but people deserve a voice. They deserve to be able to vote. If they're going to be sucked into a city, they deserve the option to have a voice. And so I think I wish I had a great solution or a really good compromise that we could come to. But I think just because something is permissible, like creating an island, doesn't mean that it's the right thing. And I think Lincoln does need growth. I'm absolutely 100% on board with that. I think it needs smart growth. I think in my ideal world, I would love to see, 1,000 acres annexed at once and get that chunk done and then annex the next in order to kind of slowly move that along. And I get why the project applicant needs to or wants to bring it all in together. Totally get it. Makes complete sense to me. I just personally just don't agree. And so I think looking out over the next 30 years, if this plan is supposed to build out over 30 years, what I've asked myself is, okay, if this were to all be in one island or one annexation and there is no island and it goes out for a vote and it does get delayed for a year because they can't move forward and they have to make substantial changes, will that in the long-term build out of Lincoln over the course of the next year, will that 1 year delay be the end of Lincoln? And I just personally feel like it won't. And I'm really sorry to my city friends, and I'm sorry to the Richland folks, because you have been super respectful. You've been a pleasure to work with and to talk to. But I can't bring myself to it. So my personal opinion would be to do the whole thing and to allow for the people who live there to have the opportunity to chime in on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Landon. Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Stevens first, and then
Right on.
Commissioner Alpine.
Option 1. Option 2. And the option 2 is because Lincoln went through a process. They're a land use agency. They had multiple planning commission meetings. They had multiple public engagement. The people of Rockwell, all the way until this meeting today, have voiced a strong no, but that they want to be included in a vote and want to change up a process that has already went through land use agencies, a formal process. I understand for the people of Rockwell, and I've just my background too. I was a city councilman for many years, and we had islands and the trouble of islands. I don't like islands at all, but when I look at your land use and your specific plans, just what the county has and what the city has to offer, there's a misunderstanding, I think, within the Rockwell area of what you actually have, and that needs to be really talked out with your land use agency. If you like the ideas of the 5 and 10 acre ranchettes and this rural life, the rural lifestyle that you currently have, you need to engage with the city or engage in land use entity and protect that. And maybe, maybe the ag overlay is a weak way of addressing, but there needs to be a conversation, and that conversation, I think, would be very fruitful for the people in the Rockwell area to engage in a separate annex in a separate application than the one that has currently been through many years of deliberation and process. So that's where I'm leaning very much strong to an option 2. And I just like in closing with that, I just really implore the people, if the application goes through or not, it has still a protest period. But if it does, either way, I'd encourage the people of the Rockwell area to engage with the city and really try to find the type of land use and that quality of life that you really have. But I don't think it should slow the whole process or indeed, like I said, the consistency of message changed at this meeting. So I'm leaning to option 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Alpine. Other commissioners want to weigh in?
It's not much. What I agree with what Commissioner Rohan and some of the items that Commissioner Alpine mentioned as well. I think that we have to look at the process. We have to look at what's been established, and I will say, I do want to give credit where credit's due, just on a sidebar. I've watched Lincoln and known people. I have family who lives in Lincoln, and I've watched the local government in Lincoln evolve over the last decade into something that I think is substantially better from a city perspective and also from a regional perspective than it has been in the past. So as much as I do empathize with the residents, I know the horror stories of the old Lincoln, and I don't disagree with you, and I could see why you would have trust issues. But I would ask you to have an open mind with this new administration. I think they're trying very hard, and they inherited something that I don't think anybody up here or anybody out in this audience would want to deal with. Some of the items that they're having to struggle through over past administrations is just, I'm a council member in Roseville, and I know firsthand what can happen when you have bad leadership in time and time again, over and over again, and just keep laying that on top of each other. And then you get somebody in there who wants to do the right thing for the people and for the city and for the region. Undoing that knot takes a lot of time, and I believe in my heart that they're trying to do that, and I hope from what I've seen here tonight and just from what's been brought forward from the residents and from the city side, that there's a reckoning of working together, and I hope that happens and continues to move forward, because you guys as a city, you need that. You need to partner together. We talk about islands. I see a lot of islands, people who are on their own islands here tonight. The city's over here, the people are over here. Whichever way this board votes tonight, it doesn't negate the fact that you guys have to work together. Nothing's going to work in your city if you guys don't find some common ground somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my career. My heart is really going just everywhere on this, and when I have to look at all of the order and kind of what you just said, Josh, I feel like we're going through a general plan process in our area, and there has been public comment, and but on the other hand, I'm just like, oh. So I'm just going to say right now, I would go with option 2. And that's all I can say, because otherwise I'll get too nervous. But I really do feel for the people. I really, really do appreciate farmers and ag, and I would love to see that we get more of that in our community, and hope we can figure out a way to help keep that part going. So.
I know you're an alternate tonight, but you've sat here. Do you want, not you, I'm looking at Chair Holmes of the Placer County Board. Would you like to weigh in at all?
Oh, I listened to, first of all, I appreciate the
Put your mic on, sir. It's always good when I can tease the chair of the commission.
No, I appreciate the conversation and the dialogue that your commission has. Listening to all the folks, all the testimony, I think I would lean towards option 2 myself. If that means anything.
I know you're not voting, but you've spent the time and done a lot of the homework, Jim, and we appreciate your wisdom. So that comes back to me then, and from my perspective, I hear loud and clear that the Rockwell Lane folks want to keep what they have. And I wish, as a county supervisor, I could guarantee that. But I will tell you that I see all kinds of applications that come in all the time to the county where people want to change uses on their property and their neighbors don't agree with them, and then we end up being appealed to and having to make really hard decisions. It's not easy. You don't have guarantees with the county either. I just want you to know that, and that's why please listen to what Commissioner Alpine said. Get engaged and stay involved with the county. If your way of life is important to you on your properties, and you need to stay engaged with us, and we're starting a general plan process, and your voices need to be heard there. I want to honor your concern about your properties, but I also need to honor the concern of other owners that want this to move forward. Both sides have to honor each other. They want to do some things with their property, and they've gone through tremendous process to get there. And I don't want to tell you what to do with your property. I don't want to tell them. They've worked the process the way they had, and I want to honor our colleagues in Lincoln that have taken huge strides, and I want hats off to the council members. Whether you agree or not with this proposal, you've made incredible progress, and Sean, you've been a very welcome addition to the county family of city and county leaders, and I've seen your leadership over and over, and I know you're a man of your word, and you represent your community well. So I would be in support of option 2 for that reason, that option 2 allows you to do what you want to do with your properties under the counties. Things won't change for you under the county, and it recognizes the rights of the other individuals. And we're not a land use entity. I think the orderly government has been addressed through the delivery of services. We can make that work. Sheriffs are going there today through, maybe not through a city, but through miles and miles of response time. So that's not changing, and neither is the fire service changing. So in my mind, I believe this represents orderly government. It's not ideal, but rarely when things get to our level in commissions do we have an easy answer. I wish the easy button was up here and I could just push it and make everybody happy, because that's what we try to do. We try to solve problems and make life better for all of us. So that's where I'm at. So I would entertain a motion.
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
before a
Yes.
motion is formulated, just based on the indication of the commission, obviously none of the commissioners are tied to what they have said until they actually vote. But in light of what they've said, there are a few things that I would advise whoever is making the motion, assuming it's going to be an option 2 angled motion, to also include this as part of the motion, because these are not either included in the proposed resolution, or the language in the proposed resolution needs to be revised slightly. So the first suggestion would be that you add what I would call a new paragraph number 3.1, and it's 3.1 so that you won't have to renumber the rest of the paragraphs in the proposed resolution. And it would be to make the finding that I alluded to earlier, that your commission must make when it approves a proposal that creates an island. Based on the statutory language, I would suggest the following for that new paragraph 3.1. It would read, based on the totality of the record, the commission finds that the application of the restrictions of Government Code Section 56744 to the proposal would be detrimental to the orderly development of the community, and that the area that will be enclosed by the annexation is so located that it cannot reasonably be annexed to another city or incorporated as a new city. So as I said, I would suggest, you don't have to, but I would suggest and advise that you include that in a motion if it is going to be along the lines of option 2. Similarly, with respect to the existing option 2 language, in light of what I mentioned earlier regarding the inability of the sheriff to cede any sort of responsibility for unincorporated territory, I would suggest the inclusion of of a clause in the middle of the first sentence of option 2 to read something like this: the City of Lincoln must provide the Rockwell Lane community dash either directly or through arrangements with the existing service providers in the Rockwell Lane community as otherwise permitted by law, dash, with services of the same type and to the same level and extent as those to be provided to the Village 5, Village 7B proposal area. That language will not only cover the sheriff, but in case there's some other issue out there that we aren't aware of at this point regarding a service provider, it will show that LAFCO isn't intending to force any sort of violation of law that otherwise applies. And then finally, with respect to option 2 related variations, I would suggest the following revision to paragraph 5 in the proposed resolution. And it would read, the City of Lincoln shall provide fire protection services to the subject area and the Rockwell Lane community, period. So I would delete and law enforcement, and I would clarify that the including is not to mean that the Rockwell Lane community is within the proposal area, because it wouldn't be under option 2. So those are my suggested revisions to the resolution to include in the motion as to option, to a motion related to option 2. And then I'll ask Ms. McIntyre to address this further as well. But as to the adjustments to the proposal area unrelated to the island, there were a couple mentioned. The one I referred to earlier had to do with the 2 parcels owned by under common ownership, one of which is approximately 71 parcels, and it's right now included in the proposal area. The other one's 9.8, and it's not included in the proposal area. Your commission does have the authority to adjust the boundaries of a proposal area, as long as it doesn't change the general nature of the proposal, and this certainly would qualify as not changing the general nature of the proposal. So therefore, you could either include both or exclude both, and just give direction to staff to make the necessary changes to the resolution to accomplish whatever your desire is, whether it's to include both or exclude both. And I don't know, Michelle, if you wanted to address the other.
The other one, which is the Lefty's property, is a little bit more difficult because it does require the county to first do a lot line adjustment or a parcel split prior to LAFCO being able to annex that 150 acres there roughly. So the process for that is approximately 3 to 6 months, depending on what the county's general plan, their zoning laws, et cetera, allows. And I'm just not familiar with this county's specifics. So that the county, as the land use agency, will need to let the property owner know what their options are as far as which process. But either way, it does involve the county taking action before LAFCO. So the applicants were presented with this information approximately 1 year ago, and at that time, they were given the option, do we do a soft pause because we're still working on the MSR, we're still working on the Williamson Act, we're still working on the sphere of influence, et cetera, et cetera. They chose to remove that parcel. So if you do decide to include that property, it is in fact kind of a soft pause now, because now we're waiting on the county's process before we can go ahead and annex.
So I think I need to be clear. They understood that we might take action without their parcel tonight?
Yes, so they were given that choice. The applicant was given the choice, and again, the applicant in this case is the city. And so they chose to leave the parcel completely out without going through the lot line adjustment or the parcel split. And so that is not within the proposed boundary. It was also not included and the tax negotiations that were taken to both City Council and the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Basically, it'd be, so basically it'd be a separate action at this point. If we just moved, if we just decided to move forward with option 2 as amended by our attorney and Michelle, the parcel that we were talking about.
Nicholas, I'll just call it Nicholas.
The Nicholas parcel would have to come later.
So Nicholas, you could do, because as Michael indicated, it does not change the nature of the proposal, but here you have property, prime ag land, Williamson Act, active Williamson Act, and so there are, and it did not go through the negotiation process. It was not part of that. So the county and the city both actually have the opportunity to renegotiate. They let us know within 30 days of LAFCO approval if they want to renegotiate, because we've changed the boundary. And here, as I mentioned, it's 150 acres of prime ag land, Williamson Act, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just me looking at the surface level information, not digging deep into the actual information.
That's if we wanted to address that.
That's if you wanted to.
But if we didn't want to address it, we don't.
You just leave it out.
And so the only thing that needs to be addressed, those the 2 parcels in the Rockwell area, right?
Yes,
This
at
motion.
the request of the homeowners or the landowners. Now, the county surveyor did confirm that those 2 parcels are legal, separate legal parcels, so that you can sell one and keep the other, et cetera. And so it doesn't tie them, but the landowner, as I mentioned, they would like both go, both taken out. I think what they prefer is to be excluded, but that's in their letter, which is provided to you. Don't take my word for it. So you'll have to see that in their letter. But yes, the Nicholas 9 point whatever parcel and the 71 you can take now, and the other one, if you do want to include it, then we will have to
Soft pause.
soft pause, because
On that only, though,
on the whole thing.
on the whole thing.
Mr. Phillips has stood up. Do you have a clarifying point to make? Okay, I'll allow that.
Has covered the issue, but I just want to make sure the process that we understand we need to go through, and perhaps that would provide some comfort to the commissioners. As was mentioned, this lot line issue was recognized about a year ago. The interest of the city was not to slow down the whole process, try to clean that up at that point, because there were environmental CEQA issues that were raised, et cetera, if you wanted to expand beyond and take in the entire 320 or 315 versus the 160 or 150. So what has been discussed is that the Lefty family and Ferreira family would pursue the lot line adjustment with the assistance of Richland and the cooperation of the city. And we understand that there are some cleanup boundary issues that are going to be coming back to the commission regardless. That are some other slivers that need to be addressed from an infrastructure standpoint. The idea being that the request for this 150 acres would then would reflect a parcel line consistent with the annexation line, and it would be joined with another cleanup application, come back before you, and be annexed. We're confident that the Williamson contract issue can be addressed through the lot line adjustment process, does not provide any or present any obstacles that can't be surmounted, and that we would anticipate to be back in front of you cooperatively with the city on a future boundary cleanup item, and we'd all be there first to say, remember when we were here on September 13th of 2023. And so at that point, we hope that 150, 160 acres would be annexed into the city. Does that provide
Yeah,
greater
Yes.
clarification?
Thank you
Just
for that.
clarification for the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that clarification. Michelle, are you in agreement with that? I
So,
saw you.
So I'm wearing my LAFCO hat, and as I mentioned, it's prime ag land. It's under active Williamson Act. I'm not quite certain, perhaps legal counsel. I don't know how we would make those necessary and require determinations because of the implications, the prime ag land, story index 100, right? And all the limitations that come with that and Williamson Act. And so I would hate to say, yes, it's just a normal boundary cleanup like we had with the SUD-B, 200 feet of Highway 65, but this isn't 200 feet of Highway 65. It is prime ag land. So I'm not sure, but maybe.
But that would be subject to
That'd be
coming
subject.
back and being heard again.
Right, it's just what I'm
So we
saying.
don't need to make a decision tonight.
Right, it's just that when we come
You
back.
don't want him to rely on that it's an automatic, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes,
And he's
thank you.
nodding in agreement.
Okay,
And the Williamson issue and the, I'm sorry,
Prime ag.
Michelle, what was the other item?
prime ag.
And the prime ag land is not dissimilar from other properties already being annexed as part of the annexation. So it's not unusual in that sense. There are other Williamson Ag properties being annexed, and there are other with similar ag characteristics.
Okay, but that'll be a case for another day. Yeah. Okay.
Right, I just didn't want to give someone false hope,
I
like it's a,
appreciate.
thank you.
You're very honest and direct. We appreciate that very much, Michelle. And so I think that's cleared up all the commissioners before we vote, that you're very clear on the motion and the recommendations. But we haven't had a motion yet, so I'm looking for,
Well, I would like to take a simple route and say my motion is exactly what the attorney said with the staff's additional comments, because he wrote it into the record.
okay?
If you'll accept it or you'll repeat it,
Just to clarify, it would be to approve the proposed resolution with those amendments to it,
Yes.
as well as you'll have to make a decision whether to exclude or include that extra parcel, however, in your
to
motion.
include.
To include that extra parcel, okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any clarifying questions, commissioners? Okay, then Amy, I'd like to do a roll call vote on this. Can you ask staff or the attorney? That would be great.
If we are to vote on this, it says that we need a specific factual justification for the creation of the island. So I'd like that statement if you can.
Yes, I'll have Michael
I'm a
repeat the
little dense,
determination.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Just maybe didn't-
I think we just need to restate the determination.
Yes. Yeah.
What he was referring to is the proposed new paragraph 3.1, which will say, the commission will be saying, based on the totality of the record, the commission finds that the application of the restrictions of Government Code Section 56744, which is a section that generally prohibits the creation of islands, to the proposal would be detrimental to the orderly development of the community, and that the area that will be enclosed by the annexation is so located that it cannot reasonably be annexed to another city or incorporated as a new city. That will achieve that finding that is
The
required
finding.
by statute.
Yes.
I understood that.
Yes.
Everybody clear on that? Okay. Right. Okay, Amy, I'll ask you to call
All right,
the vote.
all right. Commissioner Alpine,
Yes.
Commissioner Landon,
No.
Commissioner Mendonça,
Yes.
Commissioner Rohan,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens,
No.
Alternate Commissioner Nisley,
Yes.
and Chair Gustafson.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for your attendance tonight on this item. We have one or two more quick items on our agenda, but I really appreciate the courtesy and thoughtfulness of all of your comments and your concern for this great community that you have and this great county that we have. So thank you. Then we'll move on to our last two items on our agenda.
I'll give him a minute to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have my agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just tough. It is. You know.
First.
I mean, it feels like we've been in before hearing everyone tonight. That's where I'm leaning. It's just personal.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's why we have more than one person. That's right.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Okay. So, excuse me, we're going to just keep going for just a minute, so if you can be quiet as you leave. Under correspondence, Michelle, was there anything you wanted to cover for us?
Turn my mic off. There's nothing specific unless you have questions.
I don't. Okay. Then on executive officer merit increase, I wanted to put this off. We are going to be asking for a special commission meeting for this item, and we'll work with Amy and Michelle to time that and get on your schedules for this item. Commissioner Rohan, Commissioner Landon, and I today met with County HR. We have a couple of options to pursue, and we'll be bringing that back to the commission. And then on to item number 10, commissioner comments.
No comments.
No comment.
Have we commented enough?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Then I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Commissioners.
Thanks,
job.
Josh.
Great job.
Yeah.